Excellent. So, hello to anybody who is joining the live stream early. One or two comments in the comment box already, which is great. One or two viewers watching already, which is great. Obviously, quite a surprise result for Celtic, winning 1-0 away from home in Germany. As Rubber Duck 67 says, VA victory in Europe Day. That's the first time Celtic have ever won an away game in Germany in a European competition. We'd had 4 draws in the past, and 4 draws and 12 defeats, and that's the first time we've won away from home in Germany, and I think it's the second knockout game that we've won since about 20 odd years ago. So I think it's the first time we've only won 2 knockout games basically in Europe since we knocked out Barcelona over 20 years ago. So sorry, just the camera froze there for a wee second or two. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come. Yes, JJ211, FTU. Good evening to you as well. Good evening, assuming Rubber Duck is already on as well. Better performance, yep. It was a very good defensive performance. The stats, which I'll put up in a wee while once a few more people have joined, were quite surprising, but very good defensive performance. If only we'd had Sinisalo in goals for the first leg, I don't think we would have conceded 4 goals. We might have conceded 1 goal or 2 goals. We missed a few chances in that first game at Celtic Park. Of course, we don't know quite how the second leg would have gone had Stuttgart not been 4-1 up after the first leg, but it did look like Stuttgart put out pretty much their best team. Good evening to you as well, Tone70. Good evening to you, Paul Maguire. Hail to you. Hail to the rest of the fans watching. That's Hail to you as well, Sligo Boy, one of the regulars. That's great. Sorry. Yes, Rubber Duck, you did predict a Celtic win. I was a wee bit sceptical, but you were right and I was wrong. Sorry, my camera keeps on freezing every so often. I do apologise. Hopefully it'll settle down in a wee bit in time. So apologies if every now and again we lose the signal. So yes, well done to Rubber Duck. Rubber Duck predicted a win for Celtic. I was a bit sceptical in our wee chat earlier on this afternoon, but Rubber Duck was right, I was wrong. Great to have you on, Callum Coyle 2359. Yes, it was great. Great to have you on as well, Scott Dougal. Great to have you as well, Lawrence6348. Again, one of the long-standing viewers, subscribers, and commenters on the live stream. It's been great. It's great to have so many regular customers, regular contributors, so many people with lots of great ideas. We don't always agree on absolutely everything, but everyone's got some brilliant ideas. Yes, lots of positives from tonight. Does give Martin O'Neill a few selection choices. I think personally, and this is my personal opinion, that I would tend to agree with that. JJ211. I think Sinisalo was a big difference between the first leg and the second leg. He made officially 6 saves, some of those saves were actually very, very good saves. A couple of times, the Stuttgart players were 1-on-1 with him. Good, powerful shots from close in and from the edge of the box. He actually, I thought, commanded his box better for high balls into the box, corners, etc. His distribution was good when it was required. And I think Sinisalo deserves a chance in the team, personally, rather than Schmeichel. And as I was saying a wee bit earlier on, not sure whether it came through because camera was a bit erratic at that time. I think Sinisalo deserves to run in the team. Sinisalo, for me, is a starter on Sunday. Very strong questions now as to whether McCowan should be starting alongside McGregor in that deeper midfield role. He sort of played more of the Nygren role, although starting primarily as a midfielder. I think Nygren does have to come in for the Rangers game personally, just because he scores goals for Celtic, he creates goals for Celtic. He's our top scorer this season. I think he's the top assist maker this season for Celtic, so I think he does have to start the game against Rangers. However, for me, McCowan deserves that place in the midfield. I think Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain might actually be better coming off the bench for the last 20-30 minutes rather than him coming on as the starter. Rio Hatate, I think that was Hatate's. It wasn't a good game by Hatate, but I think it was Hatate's best game for quite a number of months. It was still an average performance, a 6 or 6.5 out of 10 type performance. It wasn't the Hatate of last season. It wasn't the Hatate of his first season under Ange Postecoglou, but it was getting back near there. And I think the other player who probably has played himself into the team on Sunday is Dane Murray. I think a lot of us might well have had it's an interesting theory. And certainly Rangers have quite often played certainly Rangers quite often have played two up front. Have quite often played two up front. Neither of their strikers is particularly sort of big and bulky and strong, which is often where Liam Scales does struggle. However, Dane Murray, I think, does have the physicality to cope with tall, strong strikers. Murray's got a wee bit more pace than Scales as well. McCowan ahead of Hatate, I would definitely agree with that. I was edging towards Hatate being the starter on Sunday, simply on the basis of experience, simply on the basis of him having played well in previous Celtic Rangers games. But for me, McCowan's a starter. For me, Murray's now a starter. I think Dijsselmeijer probably gets the start on the left-hand side. Yang gets the start on the right-hand side. I thought Yang's defensive work today was brilliant. His final ball, his getting into the box at the other end wasn't as good as it should have been, but his defending, which could be very important on Sunday against Rangers, because they do like to play wide players and tend to keep their fullbacks a bit further back than they used to do. So I think, yes, I think Yang on one side, Maeda on the other. I think Maeda probably gets the start more for his defensive ability rather than his starting ability. Oxlade-Chamberlain, I would personally go with McCowan as the starter and have Oxlade-Chamberlain come on for the last half hour, a wee bit similar to what we did today with McCowan going off for the last 30 minutes or so. I think as Oxlade-Chamberlain did in his debut game for Celtic, I think maybe coming on 20 minutes to go, he's probably at his best. I think I'm still, given the fact that it's 9 months since he played regular first-team football, which was May of 2025, I think certainly fatigue, endurance, etc. Are going to be a factor. One other question which Gary Boy has brought up, I thought that a lot of Celtics players showed tons of energy. Maeda was all over the pitch again. His final cross, his final pass wasn't as good. Him getting into the box to shoot a couple of times, he didn't get a chance. Sorry, camera froze out again. I'm sorry. It's for some reason tonight. It's playing up a lot. Now, one other question I think might come into consideration for Sunday. I thought Marcello Sirachi was one of Celtic's best players tonight. I had Viljami Sinisalo as my man of the match. I then had Trusty and Sirachi both up there, close to them. I thought Marcello Sirachi was very, very good in defence. When he does get a bit more space to get forward, I think he's a very dangerous player. Good crossing and shooting in and around the box. Yep. Yes, if I thought the noise from the Celtic fans, I thought also the noise from the Stuttgart fans was brilliant as well. It's kind of what I think football games should be all about. Lots and lots and lots and lots of noise from the home fans, lots of noise from the away fans who are the minority. Obviously on Sunday, this Sunday we'll have a small crowd at Ibrox. The following Sunday we will have a much bigger share of the allocation. I would guess it's something like 2,500, 3,000 we'll have at Ibrox this Sunday. I think we get somewhere approaching 10,000 for the game against against Rangers in the Cup next Sunday. Although don't quote me on that. But certainly the last time I think we went to Ibrox in the league, it was something like 2,500. So yes, I was a wee bit disappointed when I heard Martin O'Neill's post-match interview on TNT Sports. Wee bit disappointed also with Stilian Petrov and Johan Mialbi, who are both kind of implying that, and also Joe Hart to a lesser extent, all kind of implying that Kasper Schmeichel's experience at the highest level and in big games probably gets him back into the team on Sunday. I'm not quite sure what Viljami Sinisalo has to do. He makes multiple key saves. As I said, he made 6 saves. I think at least 4 or 5 of those were really top quality saves. On another day, it could easily have been Stuttgart 4, Celtic 1, given the fact we only actually had 3 shots on goal in the whole 90-odd minutes. Yep, Lauren 6340. My memory was it was somewhere in the region of 2,500 to 3,000, but getting towards 10,000 for the cup match the following Sunday. Good point. I think the way that the fans got behind the players tonight was exactly what we should hope for at Ibrox on Sunday, and the same sort of energy and noise maximised by a factor of 10 or 20 times when it comes to the home matches, although 5 of our next 6 matches are going to be away from home, which is a wee bit unfortunate. And we have got in March coming up with the first game obviously on Sunday against Rangers. We have got some very big important matches. We've got Rangers away from home, Aberdeen in the league away from home, Rangers in the Cup away from home, then a game against Motherwell at home, a game against Dundee United away, Then we've got the international break, and then we come back with another away game in Dundee, this time against Dundee. I do think if we can get through the month of March with all wins, I think it really does set us up for the last couple of months and the post-split fixtures, where we should have Rangers at home and Hearts at home. And I think if we keep ourselves in the battle within about 3 points of Hearts at the top of the table, I think we will then go in to be the favourites in the final 8 weeks or so. So I do wonder, I do think Martin O'Neill does have quite a number of selection conundrums to work out on Sunday. Who starts in goal? Who starts as the partner for Liam Scales in centre defence? I would go for Murray. Whether maybe Kieran Tierney should be kept on the bench. Gary Boy, the Motherwell game is on a Saturday or a Sunday, so it's a home game at Celtic Park at the weekend. The only midweek game we've got in the whole of March is going to be the Aberdeen away game, which is between the Rangers League match and the Rangers Cup match. So we could play Rangers away on Sunday, we go to Aberdeen away on the Wednesday, and we come back and play Rangers away in the Cup on the following Sunday. Then it's a home game against Motherwell the following weekend, an away game against Dundee United the following weekend, then the international break, and then we start April with an away game in Dundee. So, yes. So there, as I said, there are a number of selection difficulties. Do we start Adamu up front? Do we start Iheanacho up front? Do we start Chavan Chara up front? I thought Adamu did a fine job holding the ball up. I thought he did a good job linking up with the wide players and with McCowan, etc. Didn't really get himself in the box to score any goals. Maeda was more the one who got himself into the box to get those half chances, which never quite came through. I think both Adamu and Chavan Chara have done a good job linking up the play and linking up with the wide players, but neither really has had a tremendous ability to score goals in the box. Excuse me. Not that we've actually got the ball into them to score, to get many chances to actually score. It could well be that the bulk of our chances are going to fall to Yang, Maeda and Nigrin on Sunday, with Chavan Chara and Adamu more being the linking up player and the setting up player. The good thing is, if we do play Adamu or we do play Chavan Chara, I think they've both got enough. Both got pace to get in behind the Rangers' defence. They've not got an awful lot of pace either in their right fullback, left fullback, or their centre back areas. I would guess that Chavan Chara probably is the one who's in the pole position to be the starter on Sunday. But it wouldn't surprise me if Adamu got the nod instead of him. Yes, I think he's probably better than Adamu at holding up. He has got that wee bit more of an aerial presence, which could be important as long as we actually get the ball into the box properly. That was probably my biggest disappointment of the evening. Is we did have seven corners against Stuttgart tonight, but only one of them really got into the danger area, which is kind of where we have missed Arnie Engels and we did miss Kieran Tierney, because both of them have actually been delivering some really good corners. McCown's delivery from corners wasn't terribly good tonight. Yes, I think that's a pretty reasonable opinion. I would be disappointed if Sinisalo doesn't get the start on Sunday. But I think he's done absolutely everything that anybody could ask to get at the start. He was, for me, the man of the match. He saved Celtic on multiple occasions. I don't think he would have let in two, or I think he maybe would have let in 1 or 2 goals against Stuttgart at Celtic Park. He wouldn't have let in all 4. 2 of those goals at Celtic Park against Stuttgart were very, very much Schmeichel's fault. Yep, I think it's a recurring theme, Colin Sweeney, is that Sinisalo must start. I have a horrible feeling, a horrible misgiving that O'Neill might go for Schmeichel solely based on his experience, his big game experience. I think Hatate, as I said, played better this time than he has for many, many, many weeks. Still wasn't anywhere near his best form. I thought Maeda showed a lot more commitment, a lot more endeavour. Still disappointing final ball, still disappointing shooting ability and getting himself on the end of chances. But he looked nearer back to his normal, and I really, really like the endeavour, the hard work, the enthusiasm of Yang, and I just wish he had that wee bit more final ball consistency. Yes, I think that's a really, as Kev 166, it's something. If anybody does read my things in the comment section, I've been calling for Celtic to play 2 up front for quite a long time. I think with Chavanchara and Adamu and Iheanacho for that matter, we have got players who could lead the line and have a smaller player playing off them. Benjamin Nygren has played that second striker role on a regular basis. Dyson Maeda would be good in that second striker role. Theoretically, also Chinyeki and Yang can play in that role. So could James Forrest. So we actually do have quite a number of players who could play that second striker, inside forward style role. It would have been interesting, actually, personally, rather than us having Iheanacho and Chavanchara up front together, whether we may have thrown Dyson Maeda to be a second striker beside him, or maybe kept Adamu on and put Chavanchara and Adamu as 2 players up front. Yep, I think that's a good point, actually, Tone 70. Butland's distribution can be rather inconsistent. If we've got Maeda on one side, Yang on the other, and a player like Chavanchara or Adamu in the middle, all pressing the Rangers back forward, and Butland, it could actually really pay for us. Well, I personally think Arojo comes straight back into the side. I think Donovan worked really, really hard. I think Donovan got beaten by the winger on a lot of occasions this evening, both in the first half and the second half. I think Ralston actually had was a bit more successful. My understanding is that Arojo was simply rested for tonight's game, rather than injured as such. He may well have been carrying a wee minor niggle, etc., that didn't want to exacerbate. I think they also wanted to give Donovan and Ralston a bit of game time. I think Arojo comes straight back in. I think, as Tone 70, I think he's probably suggesting that I think Arojo has been Celtic's best player throughout January and February. And for me, Murray has cemented that place beside Liam Scales for the next few matches. One consideration that I don't think O'Neill would go for might be to play Kieran Tierney as a left-sided centre-back, using Sirachi as the left-back, with Dane Murray on that right-hand side. That would give Celtic a bit more pace in defence, a bit less aerial ability, with Tierney being swapped for Scales. Yes, that's another option. Again, it is something I've suggested for both Sirachi, Arojo, and Alsa Johnston. Is we could use all of them as midfield players. Chinecki, etc., coming coming on late in the game. I think a lot of his best performances have actually been late in the game. Getting back to that, Chipper67. So Chipper67 is saying Sinisalo in goals, Arojo, Murray, Tierney, Sirachi. Well, I would be happy with that. We lose a bit in terms of the height with Scales dropping out for Tierney, but I think we got a lot better passing. We got a lot better in terms of ability to distribute the ball. I think probably get a bit more pace in defence as well. McGregor, McCowan, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Chinecki, Iheanacho, Yang. Well, that's an interesting one. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain personally is best coming off the bench. I think if Oxlade-Chamberlain does stay at Celtic next season, I think he then would be a player that would start very regularly for Celtic. Maybe once we get through this rather hectic March, then we've got the international break. He won't be involved in that. Maybe that gets him up to full fitness, full endurance, etc. I think Maeda will probably start, simply because he tends to give Tavernier, the Rangers captain, an absolute nightmare. And I think also, as someone was suggesting, that having Maeda and Yang pressurising the defenders, pressurising the goalkeeper, could actually keep Rangers pressed in their own half. That was the case in the first half of the game at New Year, the one we ended up losing 3-1, but absolutely thumped them in the first half, but missed so many chances. For me, it swings and roundabouts. I think if Celtic can pressurise Rangers the way we did in the first half of the game in January, we had Rangers penned in their own half for a long time. That then allows the fullbacks to come up and help in midfield, which helps keep Rangers penned back in their own half. That then allows the centre-backs to come further and further forward. The problem in the second half of the game against Rangers at January is we completely lost control of midfield. The fullbacks got pushed further and further back. There was a lot of disjointedness in terms of our back three that day. Some poor communication between McGregor and Ralston over on the right-hand side, which let Czernity in for the second goal. Some poor defending and poor goalkeeping by Schmeichel for the third goal against Rangers. I do think Celtic will be defensively a lot more sound in Sunday's game than we were in the last game. A bit more like we were defending in the League Cup semi-final, which we ended up winning 3-1. Lauren 65, I would tend to agree. I think Nygren has to play. I don't think there are many teams in professional football who would deliberately leave their top scorer and their top assist maker on the bench in possibly, as things stand today, one of Celtic's absolutely most important, biggest games of the season. I think a negative result on Sunday would put Celtic a wee bit behind the eight ball in terms of the eventual run for the league. Still, I think there would be time to get back into it, particularly if we win the game against Aberdeen away from home. That's our game in hand. That should bring us back closer to Hearts and to Rangers, even if things didn't go brilliantly on Sunday. However, I think the game on Sunday is a game that Celtic can't afford to lose. I think if we draw, that's okay, but not ideal. But I do think Celtic, if they play to the best of their ability and take their chances and keep up playing for 90 minutes, as we very much did tonight, I think we can beat Rangers. We beat Rangers 3-1 in that League Cup semi-final. We had the Rangers beaten all ends up by half-time in the game under Wolford Nancy. Just the second half performance was woeful, and then the defence completely fell apart for a variety of reasons. So I don't personally see Nygren being dropped from the side. I think the fact that he was rested tonight, given the last 20 minutes or so, probably is an indication that he may not be in the lineup. Nygren. So I think Nygren is going to be in the lineup, personally. I think McCown has the ability to battle in midfield. I think what we then also need is the fullbacks pushing up to support in sort of inverted fullback roles. Yes, okay, fair enough. Clashman numpty. I think Dane Murray probably is going to get the shout over Benjamin Arthur on Sunday, simply because obviously Scales and Murray have played together in training games for a couple of years. I would be much happier if it was Murray and Trusty rather than Murray and Scales. I think Trusty's more of a leader and an organizer in defence than Liam Scales. Oops. I totally agree, Chipper67. I think Nygren has limitations to play as a conventional midfielder. However, he is the equal top scorer in the Scottish Premiership. He is Celtic's, for all teams in the Scottish Premiership. He is Celtic's number one for goal scoring. He is Celtic's number one for assists this season. I just think it would be. He's much more likely to put away that chance than Oxlade-Chamberlain or McCowan or Hattati or McGregor if he's in and around the box. He didn't have a great game against Hibs, and yet he scored the goal that got us back into the game at half-time. He's scored goals right, left and centre. He's scored goals for Celtic in Europe. So it's a wee bit I fully accept other people's opinions. I think Nygren is. I think Nygren could do a lot to improve his physique, his strength, etc. I think under Brendan Rodgers, he wasn't really carved out to be a conventional midfielder. I think when he's been able to play that more forward free role, a wee bit like Moravcik, a wee bit like Nakamura, I think he's actually contributed lots of goals. And it's a wee bit like we bemoaned the fact that Nakamura didn't contribute an awful lot in midfield, that Moravcik didn't contribute an awful lot in midfield, except they scored a whole ton of goals and they were often difference makers, scoring a chance or creating a chance that nobody else could. So I think it swings and roundabouts. It would be a shame if the kind of chances that Nygren puts away and has put away for us all season comes to fall for McCowan or for Hattati. Nygren's got a fair amount of physical ability in the box. He's got dead ball ability for free kicks and corners. I think he just gives Celtic a bit more in terms of going forward. And I think personally, if McGregor and the other midfielder, be it McCowan or Hattati or Bernardo or Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think if they do their job and the fullbacks can push forward to support them and we get on the front foot, then it's a different matter. Then Nygren comes into his own. Yes, well, head of the Vatican State 2025. We're out of Europe, so there is nothing else to concentrate on apart from the Cup game against Rangers a week on Sunday and a busy March with away games against Rangers, Aberdeen and Dundee United before the international break, and a home game against Motherwell. The good thing is we've only got one midweek game in the whole of March, unless any games get postponed. That's going to be a week. It's going to be next Wednesday away in Aberdeen. So being out of Europe does allow us to have, apart from this week coming, we'll be having games on Saturdays or Sundays throughout the rest of March once we get past the Aberdeen game next Wednesday. Yes, I would agree. It's not over until it's over. I think personally this season is going to go down to the wire. It's going to go down to the last game of the season. I don't know Willie Haughey as to whether he would be a good person or not a good person for the shares. I don't honestly know. I don't think whoever buys shares, I'm not convinced with the way that Celtic is set up that it would give him an awful lot of an influence or power in the club. It would appear that Dermot Desmond has a strong voting bloc that always supports him and goes with him. He obviously is the majority shareholder. I think he's got a few other people amongst the big shareholders who tend to vote for him. So honestly, if I don't think the only real way of usurping Dermot Desmond's power at the club would be either he dies or he decides he wants to cash in on his Celtic shares and sell them for a massive, massive profit. I don't honestly know who Hearts have got at the weekend. I'll try and look it up. So Hearts' next game is a home game against Aberdeen. And that's on Saturday, so that's the day before the Celtic Rangers match. Aberdeen a wee bit. Oh yeah, sorry. There, Chipper 67 got there before me. So Aberdeen on their day obviously can beat good teams. It was Aberdeen who beat Hearts for the first time this season, although that was at Pittodrie rather than Tynecastle. I think Hearts have got a few more injury problems piling up, as well as their two best players being out injured. I think they've got a few more injuries piling up, and I think injuries, suspensions, etc. are going to become more and more of an issue for Hearts and Rangers as the season goes on. Good thing is we do appear to be getting a few players coming back. So Aberdeen on form are good enough to take points off anybody. Aberdeen, as I said, did beat Hearts early in the season. Yes, I think Sinisalo, personally, I've for the last month or so, I've been saying that Sinisalo deserves the starting spot to the end of the season. It'll be interesting to see whether Denmark go for Schmeichel or a different choice. I think Denmark have got some form of World Cup qualifier match coming up in the international break. And I do wonder whether he's going to go for. So, yep, good evening to you, Typhoon McFlustery. We certainly won away. It's the first time Celtic ever has won away from home in Europe in Germany, which is a wee bit of an odd statistic. We had drawn over in Germany 4 times. We'd lost in Germany 12 times. So it was a bit of a history-making night. Yes, Clashman Numpty, I completely agree. I think 3 points on Sunday would be ideal. We've then got the game in hand over both over both Rangers and Hearts. If we win that game in hand, we should be within at least 3 points of Aberdeen. We should be then ahead of Rangers and creating a bit of a gap to Rangers. If we draw on Sunday against Rangers, I don't think that's a bad result. I think Hearts have still got to go to Ibrox. Rangers and Hearts have both still got to come to Celtic Park. And I think if we can get Celtic Park nice and noisy, nice and rowdy, supporting Celtic and putting pressure on referees and assistant referees and VAR and opposition players, as can often be the case at Celtic Park, I think Celtic would be in pole position. What I would say also, it has been frustrating, is that several times this season we've got ourselves back into being in contention right at the top of the table, under less so under Rodgers, but under O'Neill, then under Nancy, then under O'Neill again. And in all those cases, we've kind of thrown away having that game in hand or being level on points with Hearts as we were at one point. We keep on throwing away that advantage. I think an early goal at Ibrox would be really, really big. I think it would create a hostile atmosphere for the Rangers players from their own fans. I think it also would G up the players. I think it would give them a big vote of confidence. I think, obviously, the early goal today was a big factor. Certainly, one of Celtic's great things over the last few seasons has been coming out for the first 15-20 minutes and dominating the game, very often scoring goals in the first 15-20 minutes, and that's hardly something we've done at all this season. That was sorry. Open news. No, I didn't say. I said we got ourselves into contention, and then Wilfred Nancy took over. Then Celtic won a couple of games under Wilfred Nancy that got us back into contention, and then it all fell apart again. So yes, no, O'Neill got us into a good position. I wasn't implying that Nancy got us into contention. However, O'Neill got us back into a good position. We wasted it. We got a couple of game wins under Nancy that got us back into contention. And then we had the defeat to Motherwell. We had the defeat to Rangers that knocked us back several games. And then O'Neill has gradually built that back up and back up and back up. I think the only thing that came out positive from Wilfred Nancy's time was it helped Yang become a more all-around player. He's contributed, and that's probably about one of the very few positives. One of the other positives, I suppose, one could attribute to Wilfred Nancy was bringing in Julian Arojo. Arojo was very much a Wilfred Nancy scouted, targeted player. So those would be the two positives I would draw from Wilfred Nancy's time at the club. Yang became a much more rounded player, much better defender. I think that could be very big for us on Sunday. And I think he brought in that Arojo was very much a Wilfred Nancy scouted player he knew from American Major League Soccer, and I think it was a player that he targeted very, very early to come in, especially given the fact that we knew that we were going to be missing Anson Johnson for January, February, and probably most. We've had this debate several times before. I think Wilfred Nancy would have been really good for Celtic had he come this June rather than December. Coming in December was the absolute worst possible time for him to come in to take over at Celtic. I think in retrospect, keeping Martin O'Neill to the end of the season would have been ideal, or had players like Kenny, Maeda, etc. taken their chances in the games against Dundee United and against Motherwell and against Rangers, it would have been a different matter. Yes, Lord 6348. I think Wilfred Nancy was very much square pegs and round holes, round pegs and square holes. I think he was similar to, in some ways, to the way that Brendan Rodgers was in terms of the way he set up teams. He tended, I thought, Rodgers quite often had players playing not in their best position, Negan being the best example, I think, of a player, I think, who had lots and lots of talent, had never really played as a central midfielder at any other previous clubs. And I think that was we wasted Benjamin Negan for the first couple of months of the season playing him as a conventional midfielder, which isn't really his forte. Anyway, I think the most important thing is to keep on looking forward and rather than looking back. So the Rodgers years are gone, the Rodgers seasons are gone, the Nancy experiment's gone. We've got Martin O'Neill to the end of the season, and then we've got a brand new manager coming in, whoever that might be. Roberto Martinez is one suggestion. That seems to have a lot of strength behind it. The current Motherwell manager, another person a lot of people are putting forward. Also, interestingly, an awful lot of speculation that Kjetil Knutsen of Bodo Glimt is keen to take over at Celtic. I've seen stories suggesting that to be the case. And I can't remember who I'm having a chat with this afternoon through the comment section. There is an argument to say that Kjetil Knutsen might be keen, having done all he has at Bodo Glimt. He maybe feels he can't do any more at Bodo Glimt than he has already. Getting them into the last 16 of the Champions League is a brilliant achievement. Winning the Norwegian League most seasons in his 8 years there, again, that's a big achievement. Interestingly, he's not had any real success in the Norwegian Cup. So he's never done the double in Norwegian football. So the question is whether Knutsen might be looking for a move to a much bigger club, a much bigger fan base. The Bodo Glimt capacity is about 9,000. Obviously, Celtic's capacity is 60,000. Bodo, the city area of Bodo is about 50,000 people. Obviously, that's a tiny, that would be a small Scottish town. So, and obviously Celtic is still a global football club. So maybe Kjetil Knutsen would see coming to Celtic and stabilising Celtic, getting a development culture at Celtic the way he has at Bodo Glimt. Maybe he would be keen to take that on. Well, see, the thing is, I can't remember who it was I was having a nice chat with this afternoon. Bodo Glimt actually have Unlike Celtic, they have a really very, very, very big TV contract. So they actually have a much, much bigger budget than people give them credit for. The Norwegian Men's Football League actually has a very, very lucrative TV contract, much like Belgium's got a very good TV contract for a relatively small country. So actually, Bodø Glimt do get a very large chunk of TV money every single season. So their budget is smaller than Celtic's. I'm not saying anything of the sort, but they actually do get a considerably bigger TV contract to what Celtic gets. Celtic gets a share of 40 million. The Norwegian league is 3 or 4 times as much. The Belgian league is 3 or 4 times as much as the basic Scottish contract. Yes, well, for me, in some ways, the way that Knutsen runs his club is similar to the way that Ange Postecoglou ran Celtic when he came in 2022. Obviously, Postecoglou came in taking over from a rather awful season, which was a mixture of COVID, mixture of a lot of players coming towards the end of their contract. And a lot of players who were wanting out. He then turned the squad around. I think Ange Postecoglou brought in some very good scouting, very good recruitment, which was kind of lost when Rodgers came in and installed Paul Tidsdale and quite a number of different scouts and recruiters as part of the scene. No, I don't. Given the fact that I don't think Rangers or Hearts are that consistent. I think they're going to struggle with injuries and suspensions. I think the fact that they've got to play each other a couple of times, that both those teams have got to still come to Celtic Park in the last 5 games. I think. Well, I disagree. It's the same people were in charge at Celtic when Ange Postecoglou made quite a number of changes. He turned Celtic from a very, very disappointing season in 2021 into very good seasons in 22 to 23, 23 to 24. I think he brought in a lot of really good players into Celtic, many of whom are still in Celtic's team, many of whom were the star players throughout the couple of seasons under Brendan Rodgers when we won the double twice. Well, Doogie 6886. That's your opinion. I don't personally share that opinion. The continued success of Celtic on and off the pitch relies on Celtic remaining successful on the pitch. So I don't see I don't think that the board in any way has sabotaged things. I think this season has been has gone extremely badly on the pitch, off the pitch. I think all the fighting and difficulties on and off the pitch have been a factor. I think the disputes between fans and media and Celtic and all the fact we've had three managers this season, all of which, and we've had quite a number of players who, for one reason or another, have not performed anywhere near their best. McGregor's been disappointing, Schmeichel's been disappointing, Maeda, Hatate, etc. Yes, I think you're quite right. So Ange Postecoglou was given a free rein to bring in the players he wanted. Christie, Odsonne Edouard, and Christopher Ajer all wanted away from Celtic. They all wanted to try their trade in the English Premier League. I think Postecoglou came in at a very, very difficult time. We'd had a terrible season the season before. We had a whole lot of players who were at the end of their contract wanting away. Ryan Christie, Odsonne Edouard, Christopher Ajer. We had quite a number of gaps in the team. We had, and Postecoglou was given carte blanche to recruit the way he wanted, to change the tactics the way he wanted. He made a lot of changes, and after a couple of months of things being a bit stormy and difficult, particularly, he then turned things around, and in the rest of the 22-23 season, particularly once we got past the New Year break, things really, really turned around. I hadn't personally read it, and as I was saying a wee bit earlier, I don't know this person particularly. Yes. Are you Ken 28? I think still Major League Soccer and J League have got lots and lots of really high quality players. Japan and America compete well on an international level, compete better than Scotland does. Both Major League Soccer and J League, primarily their players are homegrown players. However, they do actually have players playing in both leagues from all over the world. A lot of South American and Central American players play both in Japan and in Major League Soccer. I think the J League and MLS are both stronger leagues than the Scottish League. Yes, JJ211. I agree that all the protests, throwing balls on the pitch, throwing scrunched up bits of paper on the pitch, silent protests, all these things, I think all these things have had a negative effect on the players, on the atmosphere, on Celtic Park, on the team and cohesion, all these things. And I think there's massive fault on both sides of the argument. I think it became quite clear that Martin O'Neill was starting to get rather frustrated and annoyed with the game being disrupted after 15 seconds with all the balls and stuff being thrown onto the pitch. Thank you, Doogie6886. It's really kind of you to make a donation. It's not at all required. I'm happy to put everybody's reasonable questions and reasonable thoughts. I'm happy for everybody to have their share of the debate if what they're going to say is actually going to be constructive, respectful, polite, etc. People who just put up rude things and put up nonsense, it's not really part of the debate. It's not really part of the conversation. So. Yes, I think Ange Postecoglou brought I thought, very good attacking football to Celtic. He also brought a never say die atmosphere, playing as hard as you could from the first minute to the last minute. Under Ange Postecoglou, we won a lot of games with late goals, the last 5 minutes or goals in injury time. There was the game against St Johnstone. We came back to win. With Giakoumakis scoring in injury time. There was the 2 goals we scored against Dundee United to go from a 2-2 draw into a 4-2 win. My personal feeling regarding protests is protests should be done outside the ground, not inside the ground. Protests should be done in through the media. Protests should be done in terms of demonstrations, banners outside the ground, but not inside the ground. And inside the ground It should be everybody is trying their hardest to help Celtic win games. I think throwing balls on the pitch just kills the whole atmosphere, kills the whole attacking spirit. It makes the players all start from cold again. I think it gives the opposition players an awful lot of confidence, and that the crowd is against the Celtic players, when for 20, 30 years Celtic Park has been so famous for being a very partisan crowd that supports their players, makes Celtic Park a place that very experienced internationals find very difficult to play in because of the atmosphere, the noise, the "You'll Never Walk Alone" at the start, the banners, the flags, the singing, the chants, etc. So I think protest, fine off the pitch, fine through the media, etc. But I think inside the ground, it should be all about supporting the players. However, everybody is entitled to their opinion. Are you Kenny 20? As I said, it's just my opinion. I supported Celtic since I've been supporting Celtic since the early 70s. I supported Celtic through some terrible years in the late 70s, the 80s, the 90s, when things were very, very poor off the pitch. Very badly organised. We were practically bankrupt in the mid-90s. I supported Celtic just 100% for the whole of the last 50 odd years. I didn't give up on the club because of things weren't going well in terms of the transfer market. We have to remember Celtic have won the league title 13 out of the last 14 years. We have won doubles and trebles nearly every season over that 14 years. So Celtic has been a tremendously successful club in terms of Scottish football. So my personal feeling is that Celtic have been very, 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 very much delivering in terms of domestic football. And that model has been built on the way that Celtic has been since the mid-90s, when Fergus McCann took over a club that was on the verge of bankruptcy. He instilled sound financial management. He's installed a transfer policy of bringing in players. After the first few years, we started bringing in players, developing them, selling them on, and then bringing in more players. I don't think we've been good enough at bringing through young players. The lack of Scottish players in our squad for the last 10, 15 years has been a big disappointment. Yeah, I think it's a very reasonable point of view. It's quite clear, and certainly in Martin O'Neill's point of view, that the players are struggled when the game was curtailed after a few seconds. A week, 10 days ago, that was similar. Games against Dundee, Partick Thistle, several other games this season where the game started and then within a few seconds the game's been put on hold by the referee to take all the bits of paper off the pitch, or tennis balls, etc., being thrown onto the pitch. So I think personally, yes, we protest. And we did have some good years under Tommy Burns, some good football. We didn't win a tremendous amount under Tommy Burns, but we were competing against a Rangers side that were spending money they didn't have, edging further and further into bankruptcy and poor financial management. I very much agree, Typhoon McFlustery. I think this kind of result is a result that will bring the Celtic players together. Hopefully, it's going to bring the fan base back on side with the players and with the management. Hopefully, the fans 100% get behind the players, take things through for the rest of the season. I think what was encouraging was a few of the players who've kind of been backup players this season came through. Sarachi's been second choice left back. McCown's been on the bench much more often than he has been a starter. I thought Donovan did a grand job. I thought Dean Murray did a grand job. I thought Sinisalo was the player of the day, player of the match. So I think a lot of the backup players proved that they are good enough to be Celtic players. And for me, quite a number of those players deserve to be starters. I think several of them have played themselves into the starting jersey. Yes, are you Ken28? I completely 100% agree. Stuttgart are currently lying fourth in the Bundesliga. Obviously, in Germany, some really, really strong clubs. Only one other team has beaten Stuttgart at Stuttgart this season. That's Bayern Munich, which I think again shows that Celtic performed very well, defended very, very, very well, took one of three chances in the game that we had. I thought Celtic played with a lot of pride. I was, again, having a chat with a couple of people earlier in the afternoon through the comment section, and what I was hoping for was Celtic to battle hard, fight hard, try their hardest, and to play for the jersey and play for the fans. And I think all those things were achieved. I think they defended very well, and I think part of that defence comes from Sinisalo being in goals. I think maybe the defenders had a bit more confidence that Sinisalo was going to save the ball. I think also Sinisalo was much more decisive in terms of coming for crosses. A couple of times Sinisalo came out from his goal line to intercept balls early, something that Schmeichel has been rather poor doing, such as the goal against Motherwell, which was a big long high ball into the box. Schmeichel dithered, that allowed the guy to get in behind to head the goal. Similarly, against St Mirren in the League Cup final, again, Schmeichel a few times was rather indecisive. Yes, completely agree. I thought that Undav has been in good form in the Bundesliga this season. The other one, the Bosnian guy, the guy who scored the goal, Demirovic. Yes, Demirovic and Undav, in terms of German football, have been scoring. Have been scoring a lot of goals. I can't remember the stat that the commentator came up with, but one of the two Stuttgart centre forwards, either Undav or Demirovic, is in the top 4 or 5 for goal contributions in the whole of Europe, kind of up there with Harry Kane and Kylian Mbappe. So he's had a brilliant season, and the combination of Sarachi, Donovan, Ralston, Murray, and Trusty did a really good job defending against them, better than we did in the home leg at Celtic Park when it was Trusty and Tierney and Scales and Arojo down that side in defence. So I think actually our second choice. Sorry, everybody. Thank you for all those who've been patient. Sorry for my camera and computer and stuff failing. I do apologise. As Rubber Duck 67, a wee short intermission. Many apologies. Hopefully, everybody has hung around for part 2 of the live stream. Hopefully, it's not going to fail again. I do apologise. Not got the best of cameras, not got the best of IT, not got the best of internet, given where I live, which can be a wee bit. The internet, the Wi-Fi is a wee bit temperamental, especially in the winter months with the weather and stuff. Yes, I'm still here. I'm still here. I think there's an argument to say that possibly playing a wee bit more similar to how we played tonight might actually work quite well against Rangers. I think sometimes we, against Rangers, over attack, let them hit us on the break. I think that was very much the case in the game at the start of the year in January, where first half we were all over them. I'm really sorry, everybody. I don't know quite why things aren't working properly tonight. I am massively sorry, Pat McLaughlin. It's not deliberate. Believe you me, I am as frustrated as you lot are that my internet, my etc. keeps on going down. Maybe it's all part of a conspiracy. Very sorry, everybody. As I said, I'm as frustrated as everybody else. Frustrated as everybody else that things aren't working properly in terms of my equipment, my live stream equipment, the computer, the Wi-Fi, etc. Believe you me, I am as frustrated as you. I'm also massively embarrassed that everything is letting me down. I'm spoiling everyone's evening. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what the problem is. I've tried switching around the cables and stuff. I am immensely sorry, immensely embarrassed that for one reason or another things are playing up tonight. Not quite sure what the problem is. So I've changed some of the cabling around to see whether that gets things any more reliable. As I said, where I live, which is a fairly rural village, the internet can go on the blink on a regular basis. Yep, Rubber Duck 67 got the result prediction correct today. I think a 3-1 win for Celtic is entirely on the cards if the right Celtic turn up. If we can get a bit of pressure on Rangers, I think we can push them a bit further back. I think if McGregor and whoever his partner is in midfield can get control of their midfield, I think if we get our fullbacks pushing forward. I don't think Rangers' wide players are very good at defending. I don't think their fullbacks are very good at defending. I think they've got their centre backs are a weakness. And the last thing we need to do is to let Rangers take control of the game, which is what they did in the second half of the game in January. I think if Celtic start on the front foot, make a good start to the game. Thank you, Clashman Numpty. Thank you for that sort of vote of confidence that no one ever agrees with me, but I'm not here to be agreed with. If people do agree with me, that's nice. What I'm here for is for people to have a chance to put forward their opinions. I would agree with that one as well. Rubber Duck 67. I think tonight's performance showed Celtic can play with good defensive ability. I think they were well organised. I think the starting 11 worked out really well. Hopefully, Martin O'Neill gives quite a few of these players a vote of confidence for Sunday, particularly Sinisalo, particularly Dane Murray. I think Luke McCowan deserves the start. Not massively fussed whether it's Chavanchara or Adamu up front. I think Chavanchara is probably the better option all around. Hopefully it's a sign that Dyson Maida has some of his enthusiasm back. I thought he played with a lot more energy and attack. He was all over the pitch, defended well, midfield well, came back and tackled well. His final third play wasn't as good as it should have been. I honestly think that I do wonder about Iheanacho's fitness, in that there was a couple of times in recent weeks where he's had a chance to get in behind the defence and just hasn't got the pace to carry on the attack. He did hold up the ball nicely today, but he could have and should have driven at the Stuttgart defence. He ended up slowing things down and passing to Chinecki, whose shot was rather weak. So if Iheanacho, as he was before he tore his hamstring for the first time, I think would have been a good bet to be the starting centre forward. I don't think he's responded well to tearing his hamstring that first time in the European match. He then came back, played half an hour, tore it again against St Mirren, came back after a couple of months out. Then he played a wee bit and then was missing for 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think his fitness is as good as it should be. There is an argument, Clashman Numpty, to use Maeda for that all over the place sort of constant energy, constant harassment of the Rangers back four and goalkeeper. I just wish that Maeda of this season could finish half as well as he did last season. I think they're probably going to go for Chavanchara or Adamu. Both of them, I think, have also got the energy, the pace, the ability to harass the Rangers back four with the support of Maeda on one side and Yang on the other to pen them back. Yes, I can see the rationale behind using Iheanacho up front. I think he probably does link up the play better than Adamu and Chavanchara. I'm not convinced that Iheanacho's got the pace and the fitness to be a worthwhile starter on Sunday. Yes, work rate. I think his work rate was super. Work rate was super. His commitment to the team was great. He was all over the pitch. Still, his final cross and pass was poor. Got himself in the box a few times, but he never really got himself properly on the end of the passes, etc. So, I would agree with you about Iheanacho. I think Adamu's actually got a lot of pace. Chavanchara's got a lot of pace. He showed that in the goal that he set up in the game against Hearts, making a run from the halfway line with the ball at his feet, outpacing the Hearts defenders who had a start on him, crossing the ball into Yang, who scored at the back post. So I think Chavanchara, if he is given the right sort of passes and the right sort of release, has actually got the pace to get in behind defences. It's not really the way that we've used him terribly much, but I think if we did use him to get the ball in over the top, over the back of the Rangers back four, I think he's got the pace the speed to outpace Suter and Fernandez and Tavernier and whoever they play at left back. Yeah. I don't think we've seen Chavanchara used at his best as open users now is suggesting. Chavanchara has a lot of pace for a man who's 6'3". He's got an awful lot of pace. Yeah. Yes, I think Chavanchara does get isolated too much. I think you're quite right. He gets isolated too much, and that means that we're going to be relying on Yang, Maeda, Nygren to score us the goals. I think the speed of reaction, you're quite right, Clashman Numpty, 86-78. I think speed of reaction over 1 yard or 2 yards is also really, really important. If you're more of a goalmouth poacher like a Lee Griffiths or a Gary Hooper or players like that, that's not really the way that Chavanchara plays. So Gary Hooper, Lee Griffiths, Gary Lineker is another example of a player who was tremendously good for getting himself in the right place at the right time to put the ball away. That's why Hooper scored 30-odd goals in a season. That's why Lee Griffiths scored 40 goals in a season for us. Those were excellent numbers, and those two tended to rely on speed of reaction and speed over a yard or two. Chavanchara's got more pace to come from deep. So I fully get your point. However, I think if Chavanchara is given given the right sort of chances in front of the goal, I think he actually does have a speed of reaction and ability to get himself in the right place at the right time. Just I don't think Celtic have quite worked out how best to use Chavan Chara, or he's not quite worked out how McGregor, Yang, Chuneki, Maeda, Hatati, etc., make that final pass as well. Yes, Giorgi Cadetti, a great example of a player who was very good at scoring goals, didn't contribute an awful lot to the team otherwise. Pierre Van Hooijdonk, again, scored a lot of goals for Celtic. Mark Viduka scored a lot of goals for Celtic, but they didn't contribute an awful lot apart from scoring goals. Gary Hooper, relatively limited player in terms of overall skill, but Griffiths scored an absolute ton of goals for Celtic. Lee Griffiths may be a bit more of a bit better a player than some of those other ones I've mentioned. But Cadetti, brilliant goal scorer. It's a shame we only had him for such a short period of time. It's a shame we had Mark Viduka for such a short period of time. Pierre Van Hooijdonk, all those kind of players, unfortunately, came at a time where Celtic financially weren't very strong, or with some of those players came at a point where we were just starting to get ourselves back on an even keel financially. Mark Viduka coming just at the end of the 90s, just before Martin O'Neill came in. In essence, Celtic swapped Mark Viduka to Leeds to get the money to buy Chris Sutton for $6 million. Yes, I think Pierre Van Hooijdonk, I thought it was a good player for Celtic. He obviously had that extra bit of height, which did mean we could actually put the ball in the air for him to score. It wasn't really Cadetti's strength, but Cadetti very, very good in and around the box for putting the ball away. Celtic had some good strikers at that time. Unfortunately, we didn't really keep the Cadettis, the Van Hooijdonks, etc. for long enough. Yeah. So he has scored one goal, couple of assists. When in our comeback against Kilmarnock, he came on at half time. I thought he was a key factor in helping set up the Negrin goal from the long throw. He obviously was the one that put the ball across for Arojo to score the winner. It is one of my worries is that over recent weeks VAR has become very, very inconsistent. I thought the decision to send off Austin Trusty on Sunday against Hibs was a massive overreaction, mostly because the referee said he saw it, and apparently, according to the VAR audio, he says to his VAR colleague referee, "I saw it. It's nothing. I'm just going to give him a warning." Quite why the referee then changed his mind, I don't know, because he saw it, and the referee was within 5-10 yards of it. He couldn't have had a better view of Trusty and the Hibs player. Hibs player went down as if he'd been hit by a massive left uppercut by Trusty. Quite why a fully grown man goes down having had his arm hit by another player, I don't know. Then straight from the corner kick, Liam Scales is wrestled to the ground. Clear shirt pull. It wasn't even just one of these short shirt pulls. It went on for seconds and seconds and seconds. It's the kind of penalty that Celtic have had this season and last season. It's the kind of penalty that's been given against Celtic over the last couple of seasons. Quite why Scales didn't get a penalty, goodness only knows. I think a yellow card for Trusty and for the Hibs defender was probably the right decision. A red card was a massive overreaction. Again, I didn't see the incident, but the day before, apparently a St Mirren player was sent off for a completely ridiculous reason. That one was overturned by the appeals people. Unfortunately, they didn't overturn the Trusty red card, nor did they overturn the last Trusty red card. and so we're missing Trusty for 3 games. And for me, he's been Celtic's better defender ever since Cameron Carter-Vickers went out with his Achilles tendon problem. I think Martin Neal made a very good point that it must be quite dispiriting for the referee. Can't remember what his name was on Sunday. I think it was maybe McDermott. Anyway, I think it's probably quite dispiriting for the VAR referee because he saw the incident and VAR had no new angles, no new evidence other than the fact that it was all done in slow motion. And everything looks worse in slow motion in terms of kicks and challenges and these sorts of things. One of the strange things is one of the very few referees who tended to stick with his own opinions with VAR was Willie Collum. A couple of times I do remember he was called to the screen and he stuck with his own decision. And went against what VAR are suggesting. I think, unfortunately, the climate with Willie Collum as the refereeing supervisor is that VAR is right and that the on-field referee is wrong, when for me it should be the other way around. In most of the other sports that have the equivalent of VAR, such as cricket, rugby union, NFL, baseball, quite often the benefit of the doubt is given to the referee on the pitch, who's judging things live, who's judging things from much closer up, generally has much better angles for things. One of the other problems in Scottish football, due to the fact that only, to be fair, Rangers and Celtic were both willing to put in a lot more money into VAR to get extra cameras, to get goal line cameras, to get goal line technology. So Celtic voted for it, Rangers voted for it, but unfortunately all the other Scottish Premiership clubs said they couldn't afford extra cameras, they couldn't afford goal line technology, they couldn't afford goal line cameras, they couldn't afford the upgraded version of the offside decision-making system. So in Scotland we're scuppered with fewer cameras, no goal line technology, no goal line cameras, and no extra offside technology. But even with all these things, the English League, which has all the best equipment, all the best technology, there still is constant disagreements and re-refereeing. And for me, the biggest problem with VAR at the moment is that too often they are re-refereeing games. Yes. Probably tennis is one where the technology actually can be much more objective. The problem with so many footballing decisions, refereeing decisions, is they're subjective rather than objective. So I think VAR works fine in terms of, was the player in the box or not in the box? Where on his arm did it hit? Was it below the t-shirt line or not below the t-shirt line? Where was his arm? Was it away from the body, near the body, etc.? And in most cases, the offside technology is good enough to be accurate. So in tennis, you've got line calls, which are very objective. It's in or it's out. Too many things in football are quite subjective, i.e., what was the level of force of Trusty trying to get his arm away from the Hibs player, the level of force with the Trusty kick on Butland, the level of force of the challenge on Johnny Kenny by the Rangers defender in the League Cup semi-final. Where VAR works really well was Liam Scales' shirt pull on the Rangers player in last year's League Cup final. Was it inside the box or outside the box? The VAR people made a massive mistake with that one because it should have been a penalty kick for pulling in the box. However, they didn't get things right that time. So the problem is that VAR has to make objective decisions. Was the player in the box, not in the box? Where did it hit the guy's arm? Where was the point of contact between the boot and the player's ankle or foot, etc.? All those are objective things where VAR works, but subjective things like, was it an obvious goal scoring opportunity? What was the level of force actually used? VAR can't really do that. And it should really be for objective decisions only, not subjective opinion decisions, if the referee has got a view of the incident, as was the case with the trusty red card against Hearts, as was the case with the trusty red card against Hibs. And it's been rather disappointing. And the other thing that really disappoints me is you watch the Willie Collum monthly show on Sky, the VAR review show, and 1 month, these are all the right decisions. The next month, what was right in November is suddenly wrong in December. What was right in December is suddenly right in January. It's I don't think anybody quite knows what's going to be a penalty, what's going to be a red card nowadays. And that's not what VAR is supposed to be at. I think VAR has a perfect role, as I've been trying to say, has got a perfect role for objective things. Line calls, in the box, not in the box, where did it hit the guy's hand and arm, these kind of things. And if we use goal line technology, again, camera shoots right along the goal. It can tell if the ball's fully over the line or not fully over the line. I think all these things, VAR has got a definite role. But the problem is in football, so many other things are subjective, opinions and subjective. In general terms, the best person to tell these is the referee on the pitch. And as long as the referee can see what he's supposed to see, he should be the one who makes those sorts of decisions. Good evening to you as well, Cheryl X Gary 23. Nice to have you on. Yes, so the current VAR referees are a mixture of referees who no longer referee on the pitch, particularly Andrew Dallas. There are a few of the current referees who still referee on the pitch, like Clancy and John Beaton, who quite often do VAR. But there are a couple who are specialist VAR referees, particularly Andrew Dallas. I'm not personally convinced that there's a strong bias with these things, but what I would definitely 100% support is that Celtic have had the rough end of the stick of a lot of decisions this season, both on the pitch and via VAR. Rangers and Hearts have had a lot more decisions go their way, both in terms of the referees' decisions and the VAR referees' decisions going their way as well. Sorry, I missed whatever comment you think might have been wrong. I missed it. I'm sorry. That's why I didn't put it up. It wasn't deliberately. It's an interesting point, Sligo Boy 8152, and I do think that FIFA are looking to try and automate referees a lot more. I think they're increasing the technology. I think they're introducing a few things at the World Cup in America, Mexico, and Canada this summer in terms of using more artificial intelligence technology, better tracking of players through GPS and all these kind of things. And as I said, for line calls, I think VAR has got a definite role. I as I said, as I was saying to another of the regular contributors to the channel, chap called St Mary's Parish Coatbridge, it may be I got too rosy-eyed, optimistic view of the world. Maybe I just tend to think the best of people in general, try and give everybody a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance or a fifth chance. Maybe I just try and think of, maybe I've got a rosy-coloured view of the world. That I'm not a great, I'm not a believer in bias, etc. And I can't remember who brought this up, but Jock Stein did say many, many years ago, obviously, that if you play well enough, the referee can't do anything to stop you winning. And I think there probably is a degree of subconscious, unconscious bias in terms of some officials, both for Celtic and against Celtic. I think there clearly have been over the years some referees who have been Celtic supporters. I think there have been a much larger number of football referees who have been Rangers supporters over the years, but I think there have been some referees over the years who have been Celtic supporters. I think there's a degree of unconscious bias rather than deliberate bias. Certainly nowadays. In the old days, there were 2 or 3 referees in the olden days who you knew for a certain were never ever going to give a penalty against Rangers Ibrox under any circumstance. That's a really interesting stat, Rubber Duck 67. I'll believe that it's true. It does feel kind of true that there have been a heck of a lot of red cards recently in Scottish football. And some of them, to me, have been absolutely ridiculous. There was a red card, I think it was for a Falkirk player for pulling back a player at the halfway line, said to be denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. Quite how, if let's say there's no goalkeeper in the goal, and a player will be cleaned through on goal with no goalkeeper in the goal, maybe you are denying a goal-scoring opportunity from the halfway line. But how that happens, I don't know. I thought the Trusty one against Hearts was ridiculous. The ball was going way away from the goals. Celtic had 2 players covering back. The other thing you have to also remember is the Hearts player is naturally left-footed. He would have been trying to control the ball with his right foot back onto his left foot. All that would have allowed Scales and Murray and Trusty, etc., all a chance to get back. Yes. To start with, I thought that when the VAR show was only on YouTube, I thought it was actually better. Since it's moved to Sky, I think it's got more and more ridiculous, more and more contrived, more and more consistent. I think it was actually quite interesting to start with when it was on YouTube alone. Why it's changed since it moved to Sky, I don't know. But it's no longer an interesting watch. And 9 times out of 10, when I see the incident that Willie Collum is reviewing, I'll go, that's wrong. No matter whether it's a Celtic player, a Rangers player, a Hearts player, or whatever, the ones that Sky are throwing up for Willie Collum to look at, I think, are, and what he's saying gets more and more inconsistent, more and more confusing every single week. There is an argument, Pat McLaughlin, you're quite right, that maybe Rangers have had a few more decisions go through VAR in their favour ever since the Trusty and Butland incident. There were, in that game, a pretty clear red card for Asgard's groin-high challenge on Ralston. I don't think anybody debated that one. I can't remember what the name of the Rangers defender was that caught Johnny Kenny well above his ankle. That should relieve for me even a red card. It was only given as a yellow. The Trusty one on another day could have been given as a red card. It was a minor touch to Butland's head. Didn't leave any damage. However, if you look at the one where Kieran Tierney got kicked in the face in the last minute or two of the Dundee Cup match, Kieran Tierney had a broken nose. He may or may not have had concussion. he suddenly had to go off the pitch with concussion, and that ends up as a yellow card. The most that the Hibs defender would have had after the Trusty situation might have been a minor bruise on his arm. You really do start to wonder what the consistency is. Tierney's maybe knocked unconscious, certainly had a broken nose, certainly had a facial injury, yellow card for high feet, and then Trusty simply trying to get himself away from being held in the box. He did hit down on the guy's arm. You see that 100 times in and around the box every single weekend. Yes, I agree that VAR is becoming more and more important. As I said, in England, where the technology is a lot better than it is in Scotland, a lot more cameras, a lot better computer equipment, analysis equipment in the English VAR, they're still having lots and lots of problems. But I do agree it's going to cost people their job. It's going to cost relegation and promotion. It's going to cost European places. It could cost the title. Yes, the Cashman numpty, 100% agree. That was something I was just about to come back to, was the Tierney boot in the face by, is it Cosgrove, the Dundee player anyway, was so much worse than the Yang challenge on the Hearts left back. That player carried on for the rest of the game. There wasn't a mark on his face. Yang didn't actually make any contact with the Hearts defender's face. Yet Yang is sent off on VAR review by John Beaton, it was in that case. The challenge on Tierney, which breaks his nose, may have knocked him out. It certainly looked like, from the way that the physios and doctors and stuff were tending to Tierney in the Dundee match, he was knocked out. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. Similarly, there was a time where Joe Hart was caught in the face by a St Mirren player. That was upgraded to a red card for high feet. Again, Hart wasn't actually properly injured in that incident. There was one time that Turnbull of Celtic got red carded for high feet. Again, the goalkeeper wasn't injured in any way. It just doesn't really make any sense. There was an incident actually last season, Kilmarnock against Celtic. Adam Ida had his nose broken by the Kilmarnock defender. It was simply given as a yellow card, but there was a lot of flair, a lot of power, a lot of force, a lot of recklessness in that challenge by this Kilmarnock defender that broke Ida's nose. And yet, Trusty, at most that player is going to have a bit of a bruise on his arm, and he's out for 3 games in effect. I thought Trusty had a really good game tonight, particularly because he obviously had an inexperienced right-sided centre-back partner beside him. Obviously, even one further over was Colby Donovan, again a relatively inexperienced player. Marcello Sirachi, who's just back into the side after a few months out injured. I thought Trusty did a really good job of leading the line. He covered in behind Sirachi and Murray and Donovan on a regular basis. I thought he actually organised things nicely in defence. It's disappointing that Trusty's going to be missing for the next 3 league matches. Those could be the games against Rangers, Aberdeen and Motherwell. Could be, if they go wrong, could be the games that lose us the title. And I would tend to agree also. I'm not sure if it was your comment, Pat McLaughlin, or somebody else's comment. I think Trusty's best games over the last couple of years have been in Europe. I think he played really, really well in the away game against Atalanta last season. I thought he had a good game against Bologna. I thought he had a really good game against Stuttgart tonight. I think he's looked really, really good. When Celtic have had to sort of have a backs to the wall defensive job, I think he's at his best. I think he's a bit better than Scales going forward, passing the ball. Sometimes his decision making is not so great. Yep. So I think Dane Murray would appear to be the player who's going to step into his shoes. Dane Murray is the biggest, tallest player in the Celtic squad. He's 6'4", which makes him an inch or two taller than any other defender we've got. I think he actually does give Celtic a wee bit more in terms of presence in the box for high balls into the box, corners, free kicks, long throws, etc. I think he's also got a stronger physique, so that could well be useful against some of the opposition we're going to face. I think Dane Murray might actually be a good player to be in our team, given the way that Hearts tend to play the way they play. I know he had a nightmare game against Hearts in the 3-1 defeat at Tynecastle under Brendan Rodgers. I think that was partly due to the fact that neither he or Donovan had played together on that side of the defence. I don't think he and Scales had ever played properly together in the team at that point. I think that, there's an argument to say that the performance that we had against Feyenoord, beating them 3-1 in Rotterdam, that was a really, really good performance. So I think it's swings and roundabouts. I think you could say, yes, we played really, really well against Atalanta in Bergamo. We played really, really well against Bayern Munich in Munich. We had a bit of a nightmare against Midtjylland in Midtjylland. We then had a really great performance against Feyenoord in Rotterdam. We had a good performance against Bologna with 10 men in Italy. We had a really good performance tonight defensively in Germany. So I think it swings and roundabouts. So you could say that the Atalanta performance shows that we've regressed. However, you've also got this season really super performances away from home in Europe against Stuttgart and against Feyenoord Rotterdam, and backs against the wall, 10 men against 11 men for 70 minutes in the Bologna match. So I think it swings and roundabouts. I think our performance to beat Sturm Graz was good. I think our performance to beat Utrecht 4-2 was a good performance too. And then we've had some shocking performances like the Roma defeat and the Midtjylland defeat and the Stuttgart first leg 4-1 defeat. Although for me, the large part of that one was down to some very poor goalkeeping by Kasper Schmeichel and some not tremendously good defending by Liam Scales on a couple of occasions in that game too. Yes, Braga was probably the most frustrating game for me of the European campaign. I think we were as good as Braga on the night. Big mistake by Kasper Schmeichel for the first goal. We then had a goal disallowed for no apparent reason with Kelechi Iheanacho. If that goal had been allowed, as it I think almost certainly should have been, it would have been 1-1 with half an hour or so to go. We ended up losing that game 2-0 to a late added time goal. However, if the goal against Braga had been allowed as it should have been, it would have been 1-1 with half an hour to go. I would have put Celtic as the favourites to win that game. I think Braga are actually a very decent side. Yeah. It was a frustrating game, Pat McLaughlin. in that we gave one of the Braga players far too much space in midfield. He then got a shot off from distance, one that Kasper Schmeichel should have saved 99 times out of 100. Unfortunately, he let it in. We then had a perfect good goal disallowed. To 100% agree with you. I think we would have won that game had that goal stood, because I think we would have then got very much onto the got in the front foot. Thank you, Kev166. Thanks for all your contributions over the evening. Been great having you on, great having some excellent opinions. Without wishing to tempt fate, it does appear that since I swapped the cables around, the internet and the cameras and stuff are all working better, so I'll maybe try that again the next time if it starts being temperamental another week. Yes. So I do hope that Celtic, the right Celtic, turn up on Sunday. I do hope that we get off to a good start. Too often in recent Celtic against Rangers matches, apart from the one in January, Rangers have often made a good start to the game. I think one of the important things for Celtic is to get on top, take control of things, get Rangers on the back foot, put them under pressure, much like we did in the League Cup semi-final that we ended up winning 3-1. There were points where Rangers got themselves back into the game, even with 10 men. I don't know. Actually, I think honestly the weather where I live has been a wee bit erratic and changeable just recently, which often means our internet doesn't work so well. Actually, there's no one actually living next door to us at the moment. Unfortunately, the lady who lives next door to us is in hospital and has been for a few months actually. No, I'm afraid it was a can of Coca-Cola rather than a can of special brew. I honestly didn't know that was the stat. Would tend to agree. I don't think we actually have had a terribly good record at Ibrox in recent years. We have drawn quite a number of games there. We have lost a few games there. Obviously, at the start of the season, we drew 0-0 at Ibrox in a rather terrible game. Last season, we drew at Ibrox. We lost at Ibrox. We also lost last season to Rangers at Celtic Park as well. It certainly does feel that we haven't actually won terribly often at Ibrox in the last few seasons. Quite a number of draws, but we have had a number of defeats. This season, we've lost at home, won away from home, drawn away from home against Rangers, and won at the neutral venue of Hampden Park against Rangers. So far this season, it's been 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 defeat. Hopefully on Sunday we can turn that into a second win, and then do the same again 7 days later in the cup match. Yes, other Coca-Colas are available, but not for me. I'm big fan of Coke Zero. I'm not a fan at all of its rivals. my personal feeling and my honest opinion, which is what you always get from me, even if it's not the popular opinion, I think Celtic, if they play with the pride and fight and battling and commitment like we did today against Stuttgart, if we are efficient in front of the goal, be it whoever our centre forward is, Chavanchara, Adamu, Maeda, if also players like Nigrin, Yang, Maeda can get themselves into the box to be second, third, fourth options. Maybe also if we get someone like McGregor shooting from the edge of the box. All these things I think could be big factors in Celtic winning. I think what we do require is Callum McGregor taking control of midfield, or at least getting 50-50 control of midfield. First game, the game in January, Celtic had total control of midfield, kept Rangers penned in their own half for the first half. Unfortunately, we didn't take the chances in the first half, and then we really, really paid for it in the second half. We ran out of energy. Rangers got control of midfield, some terrible defensive errors. I would be very, very surprised if Mvuka made an appearance. Just that after the first game against Dundee, I thought he was decent in that first game against Dundee without really setting the heather on fire. He doesn't really appear to have been anywhere near the first team squad. I don't think he's actually been in our first team squad since that time. Whether he's got some kind of injury issue that nobody's certain about, whether the heart problem that caused him problems at a couple of points in his career, maybe that's causing him more issues. I don't know. It is for me a bit disappointing that that James Forrest is still on a regular basis, getting on the pitch on a regular basis. Really, you do think that that he's maybe past his best. It doesn't quite have the pace, doesn't quite have the trickery to beat players. He has had a few half decent games, but his final ball, final cross, final shot hasn't been as good this season as it was last season. Whether that's because he hasn't really made a lot of regular starts, I don't know. I was really hoping that Mvuka would come through and be a real bonus for Celtic. He was very, very good in his younger days playing in Norwegian football before he moved to France. He was another of the products of the Bodo Glimt system. Yep. Yes, James Forrest nearly always does come on and has lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm. I just don't feel that he is as much of a threat these days of beating a player through pace, of beating a player through trickery. There is the odd time when he gets an extra few seconds where he actually does deliver the ball really well with crosses. However, when he's put under a bit of pressure, when he's rushed to make the run, make the pass, try and beat the player, I don't think he's quite got the skills and the pace anymore. But when he does get an extra half a second or two or whatever, yep, I would agree with you there, Open News. Now, I don't think James Forrest is as productive as he should be. Is the inconsistency of players like Maeda and Chineki is disappointing. The final ball of players like Yang is disappointing. The final ball of Maeda is disappointing. Maeda got down that left wing several times in the game against Stuttgart, but he never really hit the player or the two players who Celtic were getting into the box. A couple of times, had he made a half-decent cross, there were players in the box to put the chance away. I think one of them was Yang would have had a practically a one-on-one with the goalkeeper had Maeda got the ball square to him. So my understanding is that it's going to be 2,500 on this Sunday, and double or treble, maybe treble that. It's going to be the whole of one stand for the game against Rangers in the Cup, but it's down to about 2,500 for Sunday. But hopefully, hopefully the Celtic fans who do go to both games can make tons and tons of noise and create an atmosphere at Ibrox that gives Celtic lots of support. And I do also think that Celtic do get on the front foot against Rangers. I don't think the Rangers crowd, are going to be that good at helping get Rangers back into the game. I think they're going to turn against the players. I don't think the Rangers fans fully trust the current bunch of players, the current management team. Yes, it has been one of the very, very frustrating things looking at the stats for games just recently. Is in the last sort of 3 or 4 games, the percentage of sideways passes that we've been doing has gone up and up and up. In the game against Stuttgart earlier this evening, we had a better balance actually of sideways forward passes and backward passes. We only actually had 312 passes in the whole game, which is way down what we usually do in a game. We had 52 backward passes, 139 sideways lateral passes, and 121 forward passes. So a better percentage of our passes today were forward rather than backwards, and forward rather than sideways. But plenty of the games, particularly against Hibs, we had a tremendously high number of sideways passes. We do seem to, when we get in and around the final third, we seem to lose a lot of confidence, a lot of certainty of making the right pass. There have been times where it feels like we just kind of want to try and walk the ball into the box or walk the ball into the goal rather than taking the chance when it very first presents. Against Hibs, for example, we had 21 shots, but only 3 of those were on target. Only 1 of those went in. Hibs, by contrast, had 8 shots in the whole game. 4 were on targets, 2 went in the net. So we had tons more possession than Hibs, tons and tons and tons more touches in the box than Hibs on Sunday. Just we didn't use those touches in the box, that pressure around the box, nearly well enough. We seem to have lost that incisiveness and decisiveness in and around the box that we used to do really well. I'm sorry, Sligo Boy. I purposely don't actually have any adverts on the live stream. There have been some live streams on other channels I've watched where it has been a bit frustrating. Yes, I had the feeling under Ange Postecoglou that he wanted as many passes as possible to go forwards. Brendan Rodgers was quite happy with sideways passes. I think we kind of lost the culture of getting the ball forward quickly and creatively, and getting and quickly capitalising on the space that opposition left us. We seem to really slow down in the Brendan Rodgers second his seasons when he came back to us the second time around. We started passing the ball sideways and backwards a lot more under Rodgers than we had done under Postecoglou. Actually, a lot more than we did under Rodgers the first time around. Yes, I do agree. getting the ball forward quickly, which is what Ange Postecoglou did. However, he wasn't a long ball type manager. He got the ball forward quickly through midfield. He got it out to the wide players. He used players like Maeda, Abada, Jota, etc. Overlapping fullbacks such as Juranovic, Taylor, etc. Yes. yes. I did, despite what Brendan Rodgers kind of said, I did think we slowed the game down a lot more. I think the way that Rodgers wanted Celtic to play allowed other teams to get their defensive banks of 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 defenders and midfielders rearranged. Postecoglou, great fan of taking free kicks quickly, throw-ins quickly, by kicks quickly, so that the other team didn't get a chance to get themselves rearranged and reorganised. I think, unfortunately, under Rodgers, we allowed teams to get themselves defensively organised. Also, do think that for the last few seasons, Celtic haven't really been, apart from the experiments that Wilfred Nancy did, we haven't really changed our formations. We haven't really changed the way we set up to play games. We nearly always play some variation of a 4-3-3. Tonight it was sort of a 4-2-1-2-1, but it's still pretty much a basic 4-3-3. I would really love to see Celtic play with two up front, particularly against teams that are ultra defensive, just so there are different options for passes into the box. There are different players for the opposition to be marking, and also getting the wide players in to the box as well to be third and fourth strikers. Get the midfielders pushing up to the edge of the box for shots from the edge of the box. I think a lot of the things we did so well under Ange Postecoglou, we've kind of forgotten how to do in the 3 seasons since he left us. Yes, I was when Postecoglou came in. I was rather sceptical. I'd vaguely heard of him, mostly based on his time as the Australian national manager at previous World Cup. I was a bit sceptical that he wasn't the right man for the job. I think he proved that he was the right man for the job. I think his style of football very much fitted the Celtic way. I think his never stop way of playing football was very much the way we wanted to play football. Goodbye to you, the slabbering cabbage, as well. Thank you for all your contributions. Hopefully all goes well for us on Sunday. Night. Yep. That's a really good point. I think Postecoglou moved us forward 3 or 4 rungs in terms of style of football, positivity, attacking, etc. Not the strongest in terms of defensive side of things. However, much of the time, particularly in Scottish football, we didn't really have to defend terribly much because we were always on the front foot. We never really allowed the other team to get much of a say in how the game was going. In Europe, we weren't quite so successful under Postecoglou, partly due to the fact the other team, the opposition in Europe was that bit better and exposed 1 or 2 of our defensive weaknesses. But I think in a lot of ways, Postecoglou took us forward 3 or 4 steps, and I think maybe Rodgers took us back a couple of steps, which is why I really, really hope that whomever we get as the new permanent manager in June is a manager with positivity, both on the pitch and off the pitch, has a real plan of how to take the club forward. I know where you're coming from, Clashman Numpty. As I said, I think Wilfred Nancy was the right person at the wrong time. I think that's a really, really excellent point, RU Ken 28. I think we really need to get this appointment right in the summer. The appointment of Wilfred Nancy mid-season was the wrong appointment. Very much also, it was very much the wrong appointment in retrospect. I honestly didn't think that he would be so stubborn and bring in his very, very different tactics and formations. I thought he would gradually merge things in. As I said before, I think had he had a pre-season to make the changes, a bit similar to what the manager at Motherwell did, a bit similar to what Derek McInnes did at Hearts. I think had he had a good pre-season of 2 or 3 months to get the players fully up to speed with the system, I think it would have worked out really well. But bringing it in December all of a sudden, when the players were so used to a very different system, I think it was Lorden that was talking about round pegs and square holes. I think also some of the players that weren't available through injury, Carter Vickers, Alistair Johnston, Jota, all of whom would have been ideal in the Wilfred Nancy system. Unfortunately, all those players are out injured. Glasner would be an interesting option. He does play a fairly attacking brand of football at Crystal Palace. He's taken them to success. They obviously won the FA Cup, beating, I think it was Man City in the final. He's kept Crystal Palace up in the English Premier League and sort of mid-table region for most of the time. Not having the best of seasons at Crystal Palace this season. The Motherwell manager, it would be an interesting step up from managing Motherwell to managing Celtic. I don't honestly know. I think it's one of these things. I think a lot of football managers would love coming to a club that's got the global branding that Celtic's got, fans all over the world, supporter clubs all over the world. You've got a 60,000 stadium, and I think there are a few stadiums in the whole world with a better atmosphere than Celtic Park on a night where everybody is 100% behind the players, etc., and everybody's happy. I think, as everybody knows, Celtic do actually have quite a lot of money in the bank. I think this summer we're going to see a few players leaving for big fees. Almost certainly we're going to lose Maeda in the summer for, one would guess, about 20 million. One would guess Hatate somewhere in the region of 7, 8, 9, 10 million. Maybe Chinecki leaves this summer as well. There was a lot of interest in him previously. So I think Celtic actually will be getting quite a lot of money in the transfer market. I think because things went especially badly this summer and this winter in terms of permanent players. Although in the summer we did buy Nygren. I think that's worked out really well. Signing Tierney, that's worked out really well. Chinecki's been a decent signing. We've had some very disappointing signings, obviously, in the 2 Japanese players. Balikwisha, for example, has been disappointing. Quite where he's gone, I don't know. I haven't seen him for absolutely ages. Doesn't seem to have any hope of getting into the Martin Neal system. I think in the winter window, I think signing Barojo on loan is a good move. Yeah, uh, I think, I think the unfortunate thing about the January transfer window is I don't think Celtic had any real option at signing permanent players in the January transfer window, given the fact that none of the players who were signed in January, if they were coming permanently, were going to know who the Celtic manager was going to be in June, July, August of this year. And so maybe whoever the new manager Celtic gets in June wants to play a 5-3-2, a 3-5-2, a 4-4-2, a 4-4-1-1, whatever. Maybe the new manager has a completely different system, a bit like the way that Wilfred Nancy had a completely different system. And you could have a whole lot of players signed in January for big money. It may have helped us better win the title this season had we had some permanent players, but it could well be we've got a whole lot of players in the summer who we bought in January and they don't fit into the new manager's plans, and we've got a lot of sort of deadwood and surplus players in the squad who don't fit the system. Quite a lot of round pegs and square holes and square pegs and round holes. So I think getting the players we got in on loan was probably the best solution. As I say, I think Chavan Chara is a decent player. Adamu is a decent player. Adamu, Arojo's been a super player. Chavan Chara has been a good player. We've only really seen Benji Arthur that one time against Hibs. I think he's got height, he's got speed, etc. Yeah, it's a point other people have raised before. I honestly don't know. I don't know the guy, so I don't really feel I'm able to comment about whether he would be positive or negative. I don't think anybody buying some shares in Celtic is going to change the power block that Dermot Desmond has at Celtic. Dermot Desmond wouldn't have been in charge at Celtic in terms of being the majority shareholder with a 34% shareholding for the last 30 years if he didn't actually have other people with lots and lots and lots of shares voting on his side. So well, to be fair, in terms of Balikwisha, the person who was the main factor in greenlighting the signing of Balikwisha was Brendan Rodgers and Paul Tidsdale, both of whom are now no longer at Celtic. Balikwisha was a player that Rodgers had fancied as a player for the last 18 months, so he was very much someone that Rodgers wanted into the squad, and it was someone that was a big fan of Paul Tidsdale as well. So the two people that brought in Balikwisha are both gone. Mvuka, I think Mvuka is a good player if he gets back to the form that he showed when he was playing in Norway. When he played in France, he primarily was playing more as a right wing back rather than a right winger. I would be very, very surprised if Celtic make Mvuka a permanent signing, given the fact that he's not really made much of he's played half a game against Dundee and he's not appeared again since then. So if he's injured, no one said he's injured. That would be one explanation as to why. My understanding was that some of Celtic scouts saw Balikwisha, recommended him to Paul Tidsdale. Paul Tidsdale then passed it on to Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers wanted to sign Balikwisha previous to when we actually did sign him. He'd been on Celtic's radar for about 12, 18 months before we actually signed him. Unfortunately, during that 12, 18 months, Balikwisha had a couple of injuries. and he hasn't come back to the form that he had prior to the very, very first injuries. Because in essence, earlier in his career, Balikwisha was rivaling people like Arnie Engels, Nico Raskin for a place in the full Belgian squad. If you think how strong Belgium's squad is nearly always, Balikwisha was on the verge of being in the full Belgian squad when he moved from under-21 football with people like Engels and Raskin and stuff. He was on the verge of getting into the Belgian full squad. Then he got injured for the first time. Then he got himself re-injured. So, if we want to blame people for signing Balikwisha, the two main people who put that forward were Paul Tidsdale and Brendan Rodgers. Both of them are gone. And Balikwisha being a player for 18 months that we'd really, really fancied. Well, you make a good point. Luis Palma at Celtic started very, very well for Celtic. 10 goals, 10 assists in his first season. Got himself injured in the second half of his first season. Never really properly re-established himself in the squad. Don't think Brendan Rodgers liked his personality. I haven't actually followed Luis Palma's career in the last month or two in Polish football, but I do know he was playing at a very high, successful level for Lech Poznan in the Polish league. Now, according to several stories I've been reading in the last day or two, Lech Poznan are looking to find the money to buy Luis Palma this summer. That's about £3.5 million, and then they're looking to sell him on almost straight away. So it sounds like other people want Luis Palma, and that Lech Poznan are trying to find the money to buy him. So my understanding was that Luis Palma had started very, very well in Polish football for Lech Poznan. I think maybe things had taken a wee bit of a downturn. I don't know, because I haven't actually followed Luis Palma playing for Lech Poznan in the last, in this last couple of months. Completely and totally agree. Paul Tidsdale was never someone that I thought should be having a big role at Celtic. He reportedly was a contact of Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers reportedly was a big factor in Tidsdale getting the job at Celtic. He was supposed to have this sort of analytical role. He was supposed to be I'm not quite sure what bit we're comparing Trump and Biden to. What I think is probably not debatable is that Brendan Rodgers was a large factor in signing Paul Tidsdale. Paul Tidsdale was a large factor in 3 or 4 of Celtic's transfer windows. And I don't think Paul Tidsdale was really designed for the job. And one of the people that put him forward and helped him get the job was Brendan Rodgers. And Brendan Rodgers was reportedly heavily involved in most of the signings that Celtic made over the last couple of years. Some of which may or may not be the case, some of which are definitely the case. And Balikwisha was definitely someone that Rodgers wanted at the club. Although I think Balikwisha isn't the player he used to be prior to his 2 bad injuries. Clashman Numpty, I don't honestly know. All I'm really responding to is reading lots of stories, lots of rumours, lots of supposed insiders And the consensus appears to be that that Tidsdale and Rogers were part of a two-man team, along with a couple of other people who were behind all the signings, and that there may or may not have been some signings which were more club signings. However, I don't know, because a lot of things about Celtic have always been rather opaque and rather hidden in the background. I think Kev 166. I think you make a really good point. I think in every successful team, every successful club, you need a constant turnover of players, and you also need players coming into the team, either as transfers, loans, or players coming through the academy system and the recruitment system to challenge the players who are already in the squad. And I think part of the problem is, as you say, there are a lot of players who are currently in Celtic's team who are players that came in under Ange Postecoglou, and I think possibly some of them just haven't had anybody to really challenge them for their place, and to keep on pushing them forwards. Yes, I think Pat McLaughlin, you make a good point, and certainly watching the highlight reels of Barlaquisha for the last 3 or 4 years via YouTube and via the internet, it does look like he became a less good player year by year by year with those two rather nasty injuries. And the other thing to remember is that he was also injured in the pre-season with Royal Antwerp, so he didn't actually have a proper pre-season with Royal Antwerp. He then played a few games for Royal Antwerp before he came to us. So I think he actually has been struggling for fitness, struggling for match day games as well, due to the fact that he has in the last 2 years or so become very, very injury prone. Yes. I think Barlaquisha could be one of a few rather expensive mistakes that Celtic have made. Someone was talking about Luis Palma. It does look like one way or another Celtic are going to get the money back on what we paid for Luis Palma. We pretty much broke even with the Gustav Lagerbielke deal. I think we actually could have got more for Gustav Lagerbielke, but he just didn't fit into Brendan Rodgers' way of thinking. I think Lagerbielke has proven when he's gone to Braga and getting back into the Swedish squad that he's actually a much better player than a lot of people give him credit for. And we pretty much broke even with Lagerbielke. I think we're going to pretty much break even with Luis Palma. I think Barlaquisha, unless things massively turn around with a proper full pre-season, which you'll have this summer. Well, Palma's doing well in Poland. Polish football is about the same kind of quality as Scottish football. The Polish champion, I think, came into the Champions League qualifiers one round before Celtic did. So, in terms of quality of teams in Poland, their coefficient, all these kind of things, I think Polish football, their league, is much the same kind of strength as much the same strength as the Scottish Premiership. The Scottish Premiership, the Scottish clubs in Europe have gone down and down and down and down and down in terms of club coefficients and also national coefficients. I think if Celtic do win the title, we'll have 2 or 3 rounds of qualifiers to get into the Champions League rather than straight into the Champions League as we had for a couple of seasons, and then this season we had 1 round to get through, which we failed in. I think next Champions League season qualifiers will be much the same as it was when Brendan Rodgers came in 2016, 2017, when we had to play the Maltese? No, the champions of Gibraltar. The champions of Gibraltar in the third or the fourth qualifying round, right at the very, very start. So, and I think unfortunately Scotland's coefficient, because Rangers have underperformed, Aberdeen underperformed, Kilmarnock, Hibs, St Mirren, Motherwell, all these teams for the last 3 or 4 years have been underperforming in Europe. Dundee United underperforming in Europe. Hearts got into the Conference League a couple of seasons ago and flopped. Aberdeen got in there and flopped. Rangers had a terrible Europa League campaign. They had an even worse Champions League campaign a couple of years before. Celtic's flopped in Europe far too often. We had a pretty decent season last season, getting to the knockout phase against Bayern Munich, and then this season, terrible Champions League qualifier against Kera Almaty home and away, and then a patchy but decent Europa League campaign. But Scotland's coefficient as a whole has gone down and down and down. And let's see, this summer, whoever Scottish champions are going to be will have 2 or 3 rounds to get through. I think it's even worse than the season after that, just because all of the coefficients take about 18 months to 2 years to really kick in terms of improving your coefficient. So a lot of where Scottish clubs will be next season in Europe is based on how things were a couple of seasons ago, which was, as a whole, really rather poor. Yes, so it may be once Balquisha is 100% fit that he does turn into the player he used to be, or I think unfortunately he probably is going to be an expensive mistake who we release now. A few of the expensive mistakes that we have had before have turned into really decent players at other clubs. We've also let go a few really pretty good players, such as Tomoki Iwata. Actually, Kwon has been really successful in French football after we ditched him. Say Lagerbielke has been very decent in Portuguese football for Braga. Luis Palma, certainly in the first half of the season in Poland, was one of the best players in their league. Nicholas Kuhn, I think Nicholas Kuhn didn't start tremendously well when he came in to us in the January window. However, after a couple of months, he seemed to get his fitness 100%, had a pretty good end to the season in his first half season, and then he had a tremendous second season for Celtic, and then we sold him on to Como in Italy. He's not played terribly well for Como as far as I can see. So yes, it depends a bit on what you really consider Dyson Maida is. I think Dyson Maida has been a decent winger for Celtic. Jota and Abada were both very decent wingers for Celtic. Jota, Abada scored lots of goals for us as well from the wide positions. And as someone was also saying, Nicholas Kuhn didn't have. I don't think Nicholas Kuhn had a great start to his Celtic career for a couple of months, but got himself fit towards the end of his first half season, and then had a tremendous season last year. 20 odd goals and 20 odd assists. Key and Dyson Maida were 2 of the keys to last year's success, along with the fact that Adam Ida chipped in with 20 goals, mostly coming off the subs bench. think unfortunately Nicholas Kuhn was a player that we had no real choice but sell. I think selling Tomoki Iwata was a bad decision by the club or by Brendan Rodgers. In that Iwata, I think, could have filled in really nicely in terms of being a backup to Carl McGregor. He also could sub in as a centre back. He could sub in as a full back. He didn't seem to particularly mind being a backup player, on the bench. He went on to have a really great season for Birmingham in his first season. Yeah, that was certainly my understanding, was that Kuhn's start to his career in Italian football was very, very disappointing, and I think you're entirely right. I think the manager at Como was questioning Kuhn's commitment, his professionalism, his ability to train, and certainly Kuhn is a player who's had a lot of clubs for a relatively young player. Celtic was like his 7th or 8th club in his career, and all his previous clubs, a lot of the managers and coaches have kind of felt that he's very talented, but he tends to be a bit temperamental, a bit inconsistent in and out. Certainly, open news now. There was that rumour that Kuhn was struggling because he'd had his wisdom teeth taken out. I think personally, if Kuhn having his wisdom teeth taken out a month before he came to Celtic was still impacting on his ability to train, etc., I think it's highly questionable. One factor with Nicholas Kuhn, it was that the Austrian league has a winter shutdown, so it actually had been about 3 or 4 weeks since he'd had proper gameplay, proper training, etc. So I think that's probably more of a factor rather than his dental operation. Really, having your wisdom teeth taken out is not a big operation. It shouldn't really impact on your ability to train. It shouldn't really actually impact on your ability to eat and taking food, etc. After a couple of days. It's a relatively minor operation. It shouldn't really affect your ability to eat or swallow. So I think it's more the fact that that he'd had 3 or 4 weeks of winter shutdown in Austrian football. Certainly, from what I read about Leo Labada, I think he struggled. He struggled. He had a really great start to his career. He was kind of mentored by Nir Biton for a couple of years. He even lived with Nir Biton and Nir Biton's family for a few months before he got a place of his own when he first came age 19, 20. Then, of course, obviously Nir Biton left, went back to Israel. So I think he lost kind of his father figure, best friend in Nir Biton. And then obviously it was all the problems with the war between Israel and Palestine, etc. Obviously, quite a number of people that he knew would have been affected by that war situation, etc. And then I think he struggled. Obviously, he'd been out for about 5 months with an injury. So I think there's a whole lot of factors that all came together at the same time for Abada. He had a good start to his career in America, but then I think he's kind of flopped later on in his American career. Again, I haven't actually followed that up recently, but my understanding was he had a really good start to his time with in Major League Soccer, but then has kind of fallen on the hard times and not played so well just recently. A lot of people are talking about politics in football. I think personally, I would prefer if politics were kept out of football, and I would prefer if all the banners and chants and stuff were all about supporting Celtic and making the opposition feel unsettled, etc. However, there are a lot of Celtic fans who believe that politics and football is very much interlinked, believe the two things go together, and believe that the foundation of Celtic has been political and social, etc., ever since it was started 140 years ago. So I think there's two sides to that argument. But personally, I would keep, as a few of you are saying, I would prefer if politics was kept way away from football. I would prefer if all the emotions, all the pressure, all the support, all the cheering, all the chants, all the banners, etc., were all about supporting Celtic and all about making the opposition feel scared. If people like Alessandro Del Piero and Pavel Nedved, etc., with the Juventus side can find Celtic Park a terrible place to play at, if the Barcelona players found Celtic Park a very hostile place to play, if some of the best footballers in the history of football can find a difficult place to play if the crowd is against them, I would love for that to come back. Yep, I think that's a pretty decent point. I think, and one of the reasons I actually enjoyed being a Celtic fan was that things like politics and religion, etc., didn't seem to be a factor with Celtic players back in the 60s and 70s, etc. Jock's team didn't particularly care what religion, etc., a player had. If they were good enough to play for Celtic, they were good enough to play for Celtic. Obviously, our big rivals across the city took a really long time to sign any Catholic players. I thought was one of the great things about Celtic was they were one of the first clubs in the Western world to sign players from Asia. We had African American players. We had a player from the Indian subcontinent that played for us way back in the 50s. Celtic actually broke a lot of rules and a lot of groundbreaking first players to play of certain colours and certain religions and stuff. Celtic broke the rules way back. So I think keeping politics out of football for me was something that Celtic used to be very good at, but we seem to have fallen a wee bit off that bandwagon just recently. And if people want to involve politics or sport, I think as long as they're 100% behind the players, 100% making it difficult for the opposition to get settled, creating a noisy, partisan, difficult atmosphere for the opposition, I think it's all down to yes. So I'm a great fan for equality. I'm a great fan for defending people's rights. I'm a great fan for getting people out of poverty. My personal feeling is that football clubs, football supporters can do all those sorts of things off the pitch. So no problem at all having fundraising efforts for various political reasons. No problem at all having fundraising things to help with people who are fighting against poverty, fighting against discrimination, fighting against all these types of things. So I'm a great believer in football, sport, etc., having a really positive effect on social factors, etc. But I think it's best kept off the pitch, kept in terms of fundraising, charity, players donating their own time, all these sorts of things. Anyway, think we should get back for the last wee while on this evening's live stream to talking about football things. So I personally found tonight's match very encouraging in a lot of different ways. Yes, I completely understand people's point of view. I just believe maybe that in terms of a sporting club, a sporting organisation, that those political things, poverty, gender equality, etc., maybe are best concentrated on off the pitch, and that when we're on the pitch, everything is focused on the team. But I completely understand why other people have got different opinions. Yes. So tonight, and make a really good point, it's an encouraging performance. We should have been so much better in the first leg. I think there's an argument to say that a different goalkeeper in the first leg may have helped Celtic to possibly going into this tie second leg all square. The stats for tonight's game are actually kind of the opposite of what usually one sees in terms of Celtic's stats. Usually it's Celtic who's got the massive side of possession. So they had 66% possession to our 34. They had an incredible 24 shots at goal. We just had 3. They had 8 on targets. We had 2. They had 16 off targets and block shots. Viljami Sinisalo made 6 saves. Their goalkeeper made only 1 save. That was the save, I think, from Chiniecki late in the game. Corners were 13-7. I think we wasted too many corners. They had the ball in our box over 3 times as much as we did. And our defenders made 41 clearances to their 16. So these stats are pretty much the opposite of what you usually see in Celtic games. It's usually us who's got all the shots, us who's got all the possession, us who's got all the touches in the box, us who's got all the corners. It's them who makes all the clearances. It's them who make all the saves. So the fact that we actually won the game 1-0 with all these stats being kind of the opposite of what you usually would expect in a victory, and actually the 3-1 win in Feyenoord against Feyenoord in Rotterdam were actually quite similar in terms of the fact that in many ways Feyenoord had the better of quite a lot of the stats. It just was on that night that Celtic actually were efficient in front of goal, put away their chances and defended for the most part really well. A wee bit similar actually to the Bologna match, another game where they actually had a lot more possession, but we put away 2 of the chances that we got. That was obviously partly clouded by us having a player sent off with 70 minutes to go in that game. After we scored the goal in the 30th second, we did get the ball into the box. Dyson might have kind of got the ball stuck under his feet at the front post. That was about minute 6 or 7. We had a couple of half chances, but nothing very good. As I said, we had 7 corners. I think only one of those 7 corners actually did we get the ball properly into the box, into any kind of dangerous situation. And then late in the game, Dyson Maida had a shot on goal that got brought back for a handball, which I think it probably was a handball. And then with a few minutes to go, Chiniecki did have that shot on goal after the breakaway with him and Kelechi Iheanacho. But you're quite right, JJ, 2-11. For the most part, Celtic, apart from the first minute and the odd wee bit here and there, we didn't actually get an awful lot of... Yes, I completely agree. The Chiniecki one, I was a bit disappointed with the power of Chiniecki's shot, the placement of Chiniecki's shot. I think he actually had a better chance to score than he thought he did. I think part of that also was, I think had Iheanacho had the pace to drive the Stuttgart defence, that probably would have meant that Chinecki would have had more of an opportunity to be completely free on the other side of the box. But Iheanacho kind of lost a bit of the impetus and pace of that attack. Then he did actually get a nice ball out to Chinecki, and his shot was disappointing. Yeah, I've been very impressed with what he's done to Motherwell. Whether he could do the same at Celtic is a difficult one to know. He's not particularly managed any big clubs in the past. I think managing Celtic comes with an awful lot of pressure. At Motherwell, if you lose a game, you're not going to get sacked. At Celtic, if you lose a few games, you're immediately under pressure. With the way that things are in terms of fan expectations, I think now there's this expectation that Celtic should win the league every single season, and Celtic should be winning at least a double every single season, and anything less than a double is failure at Celtic. At Motherwell, getting Motherwell into the top four is going to be a big success for him. I think he's got an interesting way of playing football. I think he's got quite a sort of total way of playing football. I think in theory his style would suit Celtic really well. The question is whether he will be able to step up to be a manager at Celtic. The last time we took a manager from another Scottish club was Tommy Burns way back in the 90s. That was a relative success. He was going up against a very, very good Rangers squad that was being bankrolled with money that Rangers never had, that eventually bankrupted them. So I think his style of football would fit in at Celtic. Quite whether he would be able to cope with the pressure and the goldfish bowl nature of being Celtic manager, I think it's a different matter. So, Clashman Numpty, you ask a very good question. My personal feeling is that where Celtic can win the game on Sunday is having at least 50% control of midfield, i.e. not getting swamped like we did in the second half of the game against Rangers in January. I think if we take at least 50-50 control in midfield, that allows us to get the ball out wide. It allows to put the fullbacks, be it Arojo, Tierney, Sirachi, Donovan, whoever it might be, to push forward to be sort of inverted fullbacks and give some support to McGregor, McCowan, Hattati, Negrin, Oxlade-Chamberlain, whoever's playing in those roles for us. I think if we can push Rangers back, that curtails some of the threat they have from their wide players. I think Celtic's defenders should be able to cope with whoever Rangers play up front, be it Majowski, Charmiti, or the new guy they got from the German second or third division. I think if Celtic can avoid giving away set pieces in and around their box, that kind of negates a lot of the strengths that a player like Tavernier brings to the Rangers side. I think if you get Tavernier defending, he is a pretty weak defender. Don't think Rangers centre-backs are that good. So I do think there's also space in behind the Rangers defenders, be it using Maeda and Yang or using Chavanchara or Adamu getting in behind. Having said all those things, I think what Celtic need to do, which is what Celtic didn't do in the game against Rangers in January, is once we get the ball in the box, in their box, once we get chances in and around the box, is that we actually put away 2 or 3 of them and kill Rangers off as a challenger. Unfortunately, in January, we missed so many chances in the first half, and we let them back into the game second half. Rangers made one or two wee changes to their formation and their players at half time, and Celtic's players on the pitch and the management coaching staff off the pitch didn't really respond to that. I think my personal feeling is the way that Celtic should try and take on Rangers is, and this probably will work better under Martin, the way that Martin O'Neill has the defenders defending, is start the game trying to be on the front foot, trying to get an early goal, put Rangers under pressure, draw them out of the way that they like to play. We got a relatively early goal in the League Cup semi-final. We went on to win 3-1 in the end. And no, Rangers did get back into that game, particularly when they went down to 10 men. They got the most, I thought, unfair penalty kick given for them when Ralston was pushed over by Majowski. He had both his arms by his side in a completely natural position for a player falling, and he got hit on the elbow with his arms next to his side. I think that was a very, very dodgy penalty kick. I don't think it was fair or within the rules, but it was given. I think that gave Rangers a bit more impetus to stick in the game. However, in extra time, we very much took control of that game again. And in that game as well, we had plenty of chances to put Rangers away in the first half and the second half and didn't take them. So I think Celtic actually probably have the players to mop up a bit of pressure from Rangers better than they have in the past. And one of the keys is when players like Maeda, Chavanchara, Yang, Nygren get chances in and around the box that we put them away. We maybe use set pieces, corner kicks, direct free kicks into the box, try and get the height of Chavanchara, Scales, Murray, Nygren, etc. in the box to put the ball away there. And what I also would like to see Celtic doing a bit more is players like McGregor, Hatate, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Nygren, whomever, shooting from the edge of the box. Something we did do pretty well for quite a long time, but in recent weeks we seem to have kind of given up shooting from in and around the edge of the box. McGregor was actually scoring a lot of goals last season from the edge of the box. This season he's had a much poorer output in terms of scoring from outside the box. Yes, I think there are arguments to packing midfield. I personally would one way or another have Nygren in the side. Whether we play him as more of a second striker, that we maybe try and get our fullbacks to provide us with. We don't go with wide players on right and left. We maybe try and see whether players like Tierney, Sarachi, Arojo, etc. can get us some width up on the outside, on the right, on the left. We maybe try and get the fullbacks to come in and help in midfield. I think players like that Scales especially is best when everything's in front of him. I thought Murray did a fine job tonight defending, so I've got less forebodings. Less forebodings about Murray playing on Sunday. I guess that he's now the number one choice. I know a lot of people aren't keen on playing Nygren because he doesn't do anything apart from score goals and create goals. That he doesn't fight and win the ball in midfield. I don't think that's his strength. It's a wee bit similar to Matt O'Reilly. Wasn't the best player for winning the ball in midfield. He was better than Nygren. I'm not saying that he wasn't better than Nygren in the more the nitty-gritty of midfield, but O'Reilly was at his best in the final third, he was at his best, creating goals and scoring goals. In the final third of the pitch, he wasn't really that strong a midfielder in terms of winning the ball back and killing games off, etc. So yes, I do think as Clashman Numpty was suggesting, taking control of midfield is important. So maybe getting an extra player or two into midfield on a regular basis, be it the fullbacks, be it the wide players dropping in to be more midfielders. Yang could certainly do that. Maeda could certainly do that. Don't think Chineki is cut out to be that sort of player. Maybe using the fullbacks to come into midfield. I don't see. I can see the rationale of using Nygren off the bench, but I don't think he particularly has done well for Celtic coming off the bench. I think most of the games where he actually has scored goals is games where he's been part of the team the whole way through. He's got himself up to the pace of it, because in tonight's game against Stuttgart, he was pretty much anonymous for the 20 minutes or so he came on in replacement of Luke McCowan. So I'm not convinced that Nygren's the best player coming off the bench. Chumeki, I think, may be better coming off the bench. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain, given his fitness and endurance issues, might well be better coming off the bench. Yes, McCowan's chipped in with some nice goals for Celtic over the couple of seasons that he's played for us. Today's shot was just inside the box. He has scored the odd goal from outside the box or the box edge. He scored a nice goal against St Mirren at the start of this season. Scored against Hearts last season as well. Yes, I would actually honestly like to see Celtic playing different formations in different games. I think we do pretty much play one way or another 4-3-3. I think we've got the players to play 5-3-2, 3-5-2, 4-4-2. We have actually got players within the squad who can play different ways. And I think there probably are some players who maybe would play better in a different system. Fair enough. One way or another, tonight's team can't play on Sunday because Trusty can't play. Scales, I guess, comes straight back in. I would love to see Sinosalo stay in the side. I think Dane Murray deserves a start. I think, unfortunately, we haven't really got an awful lot of in-form options in midfield. McGregor's not in the best of form. But he obviously starts. He's the captain. He's the pivot for the whole team. Hatate was okay tonight. McCowan was good tonight. Whether McCowan can battle with the Rangers players in midfield, I don't know. We've not really seen him playing that way terribly much. Hillary Coyle, yes, I would take a draw on Sunday against Rangers, but I think Celtic are good enough to win the game on Sunday. But a draw for me, would be a result that would keep Celtic in the battle, remembering that we do actually have the game in hand against Aberdeen midweek on the Wednesday. We will have, after the game against Rangers, this Sunday, in terms of the league, we'll have Hearts come to Celtic once and have Rangers come to Celtic once. So we will have home games against both of them in the final 5 fixtures. I think that could be a big advantage for Celtic. Rangers have got to play Hearts a couple of times between now and the end of the season. So I think a draw would be would be an okay result for Celtic. I think a defeat on Sunday makes the title run more difficult, but far from impossible, because again, of the fact we've got the 2 home games against the top 2, we've got the game in hand, and we have hopefully we have Alan Sir Johnson coming back into the first team squad sometime in March. There's been different estimates as to whether he's coming back in. There was a faint hope that he might be back for the start of March. I don't think that's going to be possible because I haven't seen him anywhere near the actual training pitches at Lennoxtown. My understanding is he's back doing gym work and getting his fitness, etc., built up. He obviously was fit enough to fly off to Italy for the Winter Olympics to watch the Canadian ice hockey team, I think it was. So he must be pretty close to being fit to come back into proper training. In that he's done a couple of appearances on behalf of the club, and he's also done a flight to Italy for the Winter Olympics to watch as a person. Yes, unfortunately, football is very much a sport of ifs and whats and maybes, and if only this had happened and that had happened. I think there's this season, certainly, there have been plenty games where Celtic has, if they took their chances under Rodgers, under O'Neill, under Nancy, under O'Neill's second time around, we would be streets ahead in the league. But unfortunately, this season, for a variety of reasons, we've not been very good at taking our chances when we have created chances. We created lots of chances against Hibs and took one. We created lots and lots of chances in other games and took one or fewer. We created tons of chances under Nancy and missed lots and lots. We created most against with Brendan Rodgers. We created less chances, but missed a lot under Rodgers as well. And it's a bit disappointing that of all the Celtic centre forwards, Kelechi Iheanacho's actually scored more goals than anybody else. Dyson Maeda has scored, I think it's like 7 goals this season. He scored 33 last season, so that's obviously a massive big hole in Celtic's goal scoring ability. We've lost the 21 that Kuhn gave us. We've lost the 20 that Ida gave us. And the only real player who has sort of stepped up and scored goals consistently for us is Benjamin Nygren. Really good point, actually, Pat McLaughlin. I think had we beaten Hibs on Sunday, a draw on the following Sunday, i.e. this Sunday coming against Rangers, would have been a good result. I think, unfortunately, probably the loss against Hibs does make the win against Rangers on Sunday more important, although not imperative. I think a draw on Sunday keeps us in the title bid, as long as we then take advantage of the game against Aberdeen midweek to win that game in hand, and then we reinforce that with wins against Motherwell and Dundee United after the Cup game a week on Sunday against Rangers. I think winning the Cup match a week on Sunday against Rangers might well give lots of impetus to Celtic for the end of the season. I don't personally think that a loss on Sunday kills off Celtic's title bid, in that we've got a game in hand and that we've got the home games against Hibs, against Hearts and Rangers in the final 5. I think it makes it more difficult, but it doesn't make it impossible. And I have a strong feeling that this season is going to be very similar to seasons of yore, where it goes down to the last game of the season. Obviously, A few times it's worked out really well for Celtic. We've won the title on the last day of the season. Obviously, with Martin O'Neill, we lost the title on the last day of the season, losing 2-1 to Motherwell in the last game. And previous seasons, we won due to a favour from opposition players, Albert Kidd and Dundee. So I still, at this point, have a strong feeling it's going down to the last week or so of the season. Great to have you on, Kev1666. Yes, my personal feeling is I would start somebody else for the first 60 minutes and then throw on Oxlade-Chamberlain for the last 20-30 minutes. And I think at that point there'll be more space, more time, and more chance for him to have a proper role. Whether we use Hatate, whether we use McCowan, whether we use Paulo Bernardo, whether we take a bit of a gamble and use one of the fullbacks, such as Tierney or Sirachi or Arojo in a midfield role, I think all those would be interesting things to do. Arojo and Sirachi have very frequently played as midfielders at other clubs. We've never really used them in those positions, but Sirachi's played now, don't quote me as being 100% right, but he's played about 60 times in midfield over his career in various different countries. Arojo's played in sort of right-sided midfield on a regular basis in particularly in Major League Soccer. So I think both of those players actually could be really good, effective midfield players for us if we took a bit of a gamble and used them in a different position from the way that we've used them so far. But both those two have a lot of experience playing in midfield at other clubs. Flashman Numpty, my feeling is that every game that Celtic goes in for, we should be intending to win the game. I'm not a great believer in us losing games so that another team doesn't win the league. I think whoever wins the league over the course of a 38-game season, probably one way or another deserves to win the league. In general terms, if you win a league over 38 games, you are the best team. I think Hearts have played well as a team. I think they've been well structured. I think they've got the best out of some average players. I think they've got some of their better players to play even better. I don't. So personally, I would. So I think no matter what's happening with other teams, I think Celtic need to win every single game. And if the battle is to get us into second place, that the battle is to get us into second place. I'm not a great believer in manipulating results so that another team does better or another team doesn't win. So I think there's in terms of European qualification, prize money, all these things, we should be battling 100% to the end of the season. I think part of the problem also last season was in the second half of the season, no one was really challenging Celtic. So I think Celtic got rather complacent in the second half of last season. I think there was a real kind of sort of downturn in Celtic's performances after the Bayern Munich draw away from home that knocked us out on aggregate. February, March, April, May, we were rather inconsistent. Quite a lot of poor performances, losing to Rangers, losing to St Johnstone, losing the cup final on penalties. We had quite a lot of poor performances. The last game of the season in the league, we drew with St Mirren. That was the James Forrest goal about 5 minutes into added time. So for me, we need to be 100% focused on winning every single game. And if the best we can do is come second, which I don't think is going to be the case, I think we're going to win the league by one way or another. I think Celtic's going to have a turn of form, much like we did in the 23-24 season, where Brendan Rodgers went on a 14 wins, one draw in the last 15 games. It was something like under Postecoglou in 22-23 was something like 18 wins, 1 or 2 draws in the last 20. I think Celtic's capable with these players and with the opposition levels that we've got of doing that sort of thing. Yes. I think a 3-1 victory is the kind of result that Celtic have got the full potential, the full capacity, the full ability to deliver. We did that obviously to them in the League Cup semi-final 3 or 4 months ago at Hampden Park. I think we have got the ability to dominate them in attack, defence and midfield. Don't think their strikers are particularly strong. Don't think Chermiti or Majovski are particularly difficult to defend against. Don't think the guy coming from German second, third division football again is much of a player. Haven't really seen him playing an awful lot, so maybe we'll get more of a closer look at him on Sunday. But I think player for player, Celtic have the players to beat Rangers on Sunday. Hopefully they all turn up and play at or near their good form. Not necessarily their best form, but I think we're requiring players like Maeda and McGregor in particular to play at or near their best. And for players like Tierney, Scales, Arojo, whoever partners McGregor and whoever plays up front to be playing near their best, particularly whoever's playing up front, because I think we are going to create chances. So it's down to Negrin, Yang, Maeda, Chavanchara, Adamu, whomever, to put the ball away. So I think Celtic will create chances on Sunday. Hopefully, unlike against Hibs the previous Sunday, we'll put them away. Anyway, I think it's probably at 12:30 in the morning on Friday morning to call things to a halt. We've had a nice 3.5 hours celebrating the Stuttgart game on this evening. We've had a nice wee chat about VAR. We've had a nice chat about the Rangers game on Sunday. We've had various theories on how Celtic should line up on Sunday, what the score is going to be on Sunday. And I think if the Celtic that turned up tonight turn up again on Sunday with 1 or 2 wee tactical formation changes and player changes, I think we have got the capacity to win on Sunday, win again on Wednesday, win again the following Sunday, and I think at that point we're going to be on course for a double yet again. Yes, I think we've definitely got a chance on Sunday, and I think we have got the ability to turn it around. Yeah. Yes. I think Yang defensively might have a role to play against Rangers on Sunday. Hopefully, his pace can challenge whoever Rangers play at fullback, presumably on the right hand side, and our right, their left. Um, um, and I do think sending Oxley Chamberlain on for 45 minutes, 30 minutes in the second half is a great move. So I think there's a lot of sense in what you're saying there. I have a feeling that one way or another it's going to be a tight game. I don't think it's going to be a game where we get lots and lots of goals against Rangers. Obviously, brilliant if it was a 5-0, a 4-0, a 6-2, something like that again. But I've got a funny feeling that it's going to be probably the a couple of goals, a goal here and there, 2-1, 1-0, 2-0, something along those lines. I wasn't aware of Charlie Mulgrew was appearing on a Celtic State of Mind. They certainly are a YouTube channel, an internet channel that's very much come to the fore, particularly with all the unhappiness and disputes off the pitch. I think if I read the story right, that ACSOM has kind of fallen out with a lot of the people on the Celtic Fans Collective. I think there was quite a lot of nastiness in terms of the minutes of a meeting, or I can't remember. I think the ACSOM people have kind of fallen out with some of the Celtic Fan Collective. I think also that's happened with the guy who does the Celts Are Here, Quinny. I think he got a lot of criticism for appearing on social media in a box at Celtic. So anyway, I'm not here to ACOSM is not SOM is not a channel I've ever watched or listened to. Celts Are Here are one of the few other Celtic channels they actually do watch these days. Used to like Ryan Mominate, don't like him anymore. Kind of gone off Celtic AM. So the Celts Are Here are about the only one I actually really do watch on a regular basis. Yes, and there is an awful lot of infighting going on, obviously within the club, outside the club, within fan groups, etc. So I think the sooner the better that Celtic as a whole family all get back together, all start singing off the same hymn sheet, all start pulling together and pushing together and all going in the same direction, the better. So I think that's how Celtic as a club heals itself. Quite how that happens, I don't know. I think there's going to need to be a lot of compromise on both sides, a lot of attempts to heal the wounds and heal all the fractures, etc. Hopefully, one way or another, Celtic get the playing staff, the managerial staff, and the staff on the board, the executive, etc., to heal things up. I seriously doubt that the Celtic Football Club has the least knowledge that there is a David 67 channel out there. And I do think it's extremely unfortunate that Celtic are still not allowing all the fan channels and the fan sites to have access to the press briefings and the press conferences and so on. I think that's a really big mistake, personally. Yes, I think Yang could have the ability on Sunday if it's required. I think he's a much better defender now than he was when he was at fault for the Matondo goal in the 3-3 draw towards the end of towards the end of a couple of seasons ago. Anyway. Okay. Thank you for reporting me to the Celtic to Celtic. As I said, I don't think they particularly care about anything I say. Anyway, so we've been going for over 3.5 hours. It's nearly it's gone midnight, so I think it's probably time for us all to go to our beds, get some rest and recuperation prior to the big game in a couple of days' time. Hopefully all goes well on Sunday. Hopefully it's a game where Celtic play well. Hopefully it's a game where there's no controversy, there's no VAR disputes, there's not days and days and days of inquests in the press, the radio, the TV, etc. So thank you to everybody who has participated. Thank you to Rubberduck67, Keelan Allen 5367, Sligo Boy 8152, Cheryl's Gary 23, Clashman Numpty, Lauren from earlier on, everybody who's contributed. Thank you very much. It's been, apart from one contributor, a very, very pleasant, respectful, fun sharing of opinions. Pat McLaughlin, sorry, forgot you. Lots and lots of good contributions from you as well. Night to you as well. So we'll call it an evening. Planning to do another live stream next Thursday. At that point, we'll have had the game against Rangers, the game against Aberdeen, and we'll be looking forward to the Rangers Cup final. The Rangers quarter final the following Sunday. So we'll have plenty of things to look back on and plenty of things to look forward to. And hopefully next Thursday, we're celebrating a win against Rangers and a win against Aberdeen. And that, I think, will consolidate us very strongly for the title run over the course of the last couple of months of the season. So thank you to everybody for contributing. Speak to you all again next Thursday. And so goodbye and hail, hail.